Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Soul Chess in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 106, Different Bonds, Kendra and Ichigo's Loss. Third person POV. Karakura Town. 2300 hours. Vera, Kendra, and Rukia had all made it through the Senkaimon about a half hour ago. Rather than bother Ichigo or any of the others on a school night, the three ladies set up their bags at Urahara's for the evening and decided they'd simply surprise Ichigo at his high school the next day. Kendra, for one, was not looking forward to mingling. "Why, what's wrong?" Rukia asked her. She was dressed in the school uniform of Ichigo's school she had kept. Kendra, already in Jigai and dressed for bed, her hair down and shining and her green emerald eyes sparkling, pointed at her body. Kendra was wearing a grape-purple robe with a white sash tied around it. She was wearing a plain blue t-shirt and some bell-bottom black jeans underneath it. "You and Vera weren't in my academic year or one of my coeus." Kendra had been a Soul Reaper longer than both. "Boys, and even some girls, always look at me like I'm a sex object. It's annoying and I feel like less of a woman because of it. I'm in an educational facility to learn not have wild sex." "So you're a virgin then?" Rukia teased. "And no." Kendra flushed. After I became a full-fledged, it's none of your business." She cleared her throat. "It's just that chivalry is so dead in today's day and age." Kendra spread open her arms. "If I'm going to be with someone, I want them to like me for me, not stare at me and get an erection. That's why I cover myself with a face mask and pin my hair up. That way people take me seriously. I want to be seen as a woman of war, not as a damsel." Rukia smiled. "I hear you there, except about wanting to be a woman of war. This is just a job for me. You're still young, but then again everyone is also different. For me though," Kendra smiled, arms folded, "there's nothing like sinking my Zanpakuto into the back of a hollow or slapping the handcuffs or binding Kido on a rogue Soul Reaper." Vera just sat and listened. She was wearing a black t-shirt with a bloody picture of a star inscribed inside a pentagon on it in a black mini-skirt. For her and Kendra, Urahara had promised that he have school uniforms for them by the next morning. Vera looked down at her right hand and flexed it. Although it was a fake body, while in her Jigai, Vera could see out of her damaged eye and her prosthetic hand was organic. If not for the fact that she was around other people, it would have brought a tear to the redhead's eye. Once the three of them were all settled down for the evening, it was time to decide who would go out on patrol for the evening. After several repeated games of rock-paper-scissors, Vera finally lost and was currently walking the streets of Karakura Town, sing a tune out loud. In the world of the living, no one could see or hear her, so even if she passed other people, it was like she was alone. Out on patrol underneath the moonlit night, Vera sang, "Oh, everything's gonna be alright. Oh, I'm the bane of evil's might. The world's gonna be safe until the breaking of dawn's light." "You're awfully chipper," Chikami Sorai commented. "I guess you must be happy to be with your senpai." "Rukia's been good to me while I've been in Squad 13, Vera responded. "Also I'm just happy Lelich Teiko picked me for this mission. I mean, I'm usually the one that stays out of the way and does nothing. I feel great to be given such a responsibility. And it's the first time I've been out of the Soul Society in so long." Vera whirled around. "I just feel liberated." "Well, let's do our best then, you know I'm here if you need me," Chikami Sorai told her master. "Yes," Vera noted. The evening was quiet for the most part. Ichigo showed up at one point, but Vera was able to get her point across that she had things under control. Ichigo knew who she was. Lelich had told him about her and all of the other people that revered him during breaks in training during the Winter War. All Vera had to do was give Ichigo the sign for Shu and give him an OK signal, and he got the message of, "You don't have to be here tonight. I've got this." Vera also produced the phone symbol using her pinky and thumb and then pointed from her to Ichigo to give the message of, "If I need you, I'll signal for you." With that, the teen went home and Vera was on patrol by herself. The night was rather low action, so while she did respect Ichigo's skill, on a school night, he wasn't needed out here. Of course, things were about to get a whole lot less simple. Mount Lucifer's lowest basement. Rita's bedroom. Bedroom might be subjective. Rita's humble little sleeping quarters were that of a cave that was lit up by torchlight if she willed it through a finger snap. Besides just having a twin-sized bed, she also had a large computer database, and currently it was going off with an alert. The signal being emitted was that a sinner had escaped from hell. Annoyed from being woken up from her beauty rest, Rita dragged herself over to her apparatus and sat down in front of it to see what the racket was about. Like the Soul Society itself, Rita's technology was always advancing, so her apparatus was touch-sensitive. She tapped the screen and opened the alert to see which sinner had escaped. Let's see here, number 605, Shrieker, location Karakara Town. Rita tapped open Karakara Town's status and checked for all spiritual beings in the area. Upon seeing that there were 3 GoDI officers, one of which was a certified vice captain, and the other 2 vice captain level, she closed the apparatus and crawled back into bed. They can handle it. Rita pulled the blanket over her body. No reason for me to go out there. Karakara Town. Vera continued to walk through Karakara Town when she felt a chill through the air. She sniffed the air. Something's not right, she frowned. Sensed that too, did you? Chikami Sorai asked. You already picked it up? Vera asked back. I've got sharper senses than you do, especially when it comes to a creature out for blood and not just one that's hungry. Stay on your toes, Vera-chan, I don't want anything to happen to you. Chikami Sorai warned. Vera simply nodded and proceeded with caution. She walked into the bustling streets and saw a plus, in the form of a woman in her mid-30s running across a crosswalk. Vera dropped down and wordlessly gave her a console. However, she noticed that the bloodthirsty presence was drawing close. Vera barely had time to dodge when it dropped down on her. The creature was all black and it had a white mask, but not like a hollow's. This mask was more sinister and it was shaped like a tarantula's face. Its feet were white and it had skinny white arms with tucked-in wing flaps. It laughed and its laugh was disturbing. You're a quick little soul reaper, he laughed. I thought I'd get you right there, but I guess I wasn't quick enough. This spiritual pressure, this is no hollow, but it seems like it might have been one at some point, and worse, it's at my level, maybe a little bit stronger. It doesn't matter. Vera swung her Zanpakuto out and prepared to fight. Cut deeply, Chikami Sorai. Vera called out her Zanpakuto and fired off the blade detachment at the creature before her. It swatted it away with its bare hands. What? Sorry, little red soul reaper, but that's not gonna work on me, the creature said and laughed again. Vera was then noticing a bunch of frogs coming up around her. It was like Egypt's second plague. Vera remembered these creatures from Rukia's stories. Shrieker, she gasped and got away as quickly as she could from the frogs, but Shrieker appeared behind her and punched her in the back and slammed her into the ground, before picking her up, jumping into the air and slamming her down onto a building. Shrieker was surprised that Vera knew his name. He was a run-of-the-mill hollow. Only 2 people should know him. You, how do you know who I am? He shouted at Vera. Answer me. Vera responded by spitting on his mask and glaring defiantly. Soul Reaper bitch. Tsuji no Mai, Hakuren, a blast of ice came shooting through the air and froze Shrieker's fist, surprising him. On top of that, a taller, slimmer figure appeared before Shrieker and kicked him so hard in the wrist he was forced to let go of Vera. Kendra and Rukia had arrived. After breaking Vera free, Kendra turned and smashed the bottom of her foot into Shrieker's face, pushing him away. You okay? Kendra asked. Vera merely nodded. Rukia formed up next to the tall, slim vice captain. Shrieker smashed his arm against the back of the rooftop and shook it off. He then saw Rukia. Why you? I've been waiting for you. Friend of yours? Kendra asked. I don't have friends that ugly or those that attack my subordinates, Rukia stated. Shrieker, Vera merely said. But that's not possible, Rukia looked back at Vera. Shrieker laughed. Oh, but it's very true, Miss Soul Reaper. You see, I've come back from the depths of hell, to do battle with you. I'm a Togabito. Togabito, but you can't come out of hell, Rukia said with shock. Who cares why it happened, Kendra said, whipping out her Zanpakuto, let's just kick his ass and send him back where he belongs. We can worry about the hows later. Yes, I suppose you're right, Rukia stated. Of course I'm right, Kendra said, smirking behind her face mask. Kill from the shadows, Akuma Ansatsu. I'll take this guy on point, back me up. Kendra said and rushed into battle against Shrieker. With her small dagger she darted towards the Togabito and swung wide with her dagger. Shrieker jumped back into the side and belted a right hook on Kendra, but the brunette ducked low, slid along the ground, until she was underneath the creature and then spun on the ground, creating an updraft, pushed her hands to the ground, popped Shrieker right into the air as she handstand kangaroo kicked him right in the groin. The most painful, yet laughable yell of pain came from Shrieker as he shouted out to his nuts, feeling like they just got hit with a sledgehammer. Rather than follow him into the air, Kendra let Rukia take the follow-up. Hado 73, Soren Sakasui. Rukia blasted the Kido into Shrieker and blasted her away from him. Kendra followed up with a long moving flash step and crescent kicked her heel into Shrieker's abdomen. On the ground Vera prepared a follow-up. Bakudo 37, Tsurubashi, Vera created the net using several street lamps and Shrieker was relaunched into the air at Kendra and Rukia. Rain down. With the Shikai command, Kendra unleashed several fireballs upon the Togabito. Rukia began dancing around her partner like she was performing a waltz. Yatsu no Mai, Byakuran. The many flower petals blasted into Shrieker. Fire and ice dominated the Togabito and he was burned and frostbitten in the middle of the air. Vera had to provide the final strike. She revved up her Zanpakuto and then released the attack just as Rukia and Kendra's attacks ended. The attack dug into his back, but didn't seem to do more than stick into his back and slice it. All three girls knew that something was up and then retreated to a nearby roof as Vera called back her launchable spiky pinwheel. Should we call Ichigo? Rukia asked. We might have to, Kendra answered. Yes, bring any reinforcements you want. Shrieker was already behind the women on the other side of the roof, fist clenched, arm outstretched. I'll crush you all. He blasted a bunch of leech bombs at the three of them. The trio scattered. That's right, run, run, Shrieker cackled. Having fun. Unfriendly, upbeat voice stated. Why yes Shrieker realized he couldn't be talking to someone not on his side and turned to see a dark-skinned woman with yellow eyes and violet hair in a ponytail dressed up in a sleeveless shiakusho with an orange jacket over it. He turned away from the woman only to get punched so hard in the stomach, but by an open palmed strike. Who are you? Shrieker turned to face her, but she was already behind him again. Me? I'm the former captain of Squad 2, she replied, Shihoin Yoriyuki. She kicked Shrieker hard in the back. Yoriyuki Teiko, Kendra smiled seeing her former superior come to their aid. Now they'd win this for sure. Former captain you say? Shrieker asked, thinking the fight was about to become easy only to take an uppercut to the stomach. Yeah, Yoriyuki said and slid the back of her arm up Shrieker's body and grabbed the top of his black coat and threw him onto the ground, but I didn't get my riot so taken away, so this is going to be no picnic, big guy. She smiled down at him. She stomped on his chest. Tag, you're it. She stated. She darted across the roof only to see a hell gate open. Shrieker was preparing to retreat. Oh no you don't. Kendra shouted, Bakudo 61, Ryukyu. Shrieker was immobilized. If he wasn't wearing a mask, Shrieker's expression would have shown fear. Yoriyuki rushed over, picked him up and tossed him into the air. She prepped a Kido spell. Hado 88, Hiri Yujikazoku Shinti and Reiho. Yoriyuki's attack blasted the crap out of Shrieker and destroyed him. Yoriyuki dropped to the ground and the Hellgate sealed itself. Kendra, Vera, and Rukia all stood around her. Thanks for that, Yoriyuki Teiko, we were in a tight spot there. Don't sell yourself short. Yoriyuki brushed the right side of her bangs out of her eyes. If you weren't affected by Gentai Kaijo Kendra, you could have easily taken that guy. And it's just Yoriyuki, Kendra. I'm not your Teiko anymore. You'll always be Teiko to me, Kendra smiled in admiration. How did you know we were in trouble? Rukia asked. So iPhone picked up on it, but she has to teach so I came out here, Yoriyuki said and smiled. For what it's worth, you three handled yourself pretty well. Nevertheless, she spoke with a serious look on her face, you should report this to Lelich. Togabito breaking out of hell is not a rare occurrence, it's never happened before. Your investigation on Jinjo Kyujo, I think, can be suspended until then. Kendra was surprised. How did you? 3 Soul Reapers, with one being the leader of Patrol Corps and the other being the closest to the current substitute Soul Reaper, Kurosaki Ichigo. Yeah, there's no other explanation for that, plus an extra really, Yoriyuki stated with a smirk. That's some sharp intuition, Rukia complimented. Yoriyuki nodded. Anyway, I guess I should head back. You ladies carry on and stay well, okay? The trio nodded in acknowledgement and Yoriyuki left. Hell, circle number 5. Sale and Kira were in the midst of getting their asses handed to them by none other than their old superior, a Tremere Talbumasuk. He was fighting them, unarmed, not even going for his Zanpakuto. Kira and Sale, at first, didn't understand why their former lord was so hostile. Did he honestly blame them for everything? However, as they fell from Circle 4 to Circle 4, Talbumasuk landed in front of them and picked up Sale by the throat. A Tremere-sama, what has you enraged? Please, there's no need for such anger, Sale pleaded. I've heard you have information on Mia. Talk. Talbumasuk said, preparing a shakkeiho and aiming it at Sale's face. I don't know all that much. Kira and I saw her in passing in Circle 6. We haven't done anything with her, honest sire. Sale was terrified. Talbumasuk let go of his rage. He knew Sale better than to lie to his face. Maybe someone else's, but not his. Sale liked life. Talbumasuk threw Sale to the ground. I believe you, he said and began to walk away. He stopped and looked over his shoulder. Take care of yourselves, and if you have information like that, you look for me. I am Togabito number 3. You are number 288, Sale, so unless you would like me to rip you a new one, you start spreading word that you're looking for me so we don't have a misunderstanding like this again. Is that clear? Yes, my lord, understood my lord, Sale said, pushing himself up off the ground a little. Talbumasuk left immediately. That was a close call. Kira pushed himself up off the ground and helped Sale to his feet. The two Novenas had been hanging out with each other ever since they met up in the Colosseum on Circle 2. The rule in Hell was kill or be killed, so some weaker Togabito paired up with others to make themselves less vulnerable to attack. Sale and Kira had become an unlikely duo after Sale learned how to attain Segunda Etapa just from watching Kira do it enough times. The less said about how it looks, the better. The number system in Hell was devised similarly to how Aizen had devised the Espada. All Togabito, upon entering Hell, were given an identification number by the Hell's Will system. The numbers ran from 1 to however many sinners were in Hell, and the lower the number the more powerful the Togabito was considered by the Kusanada and, of course, Rita, as she was the one who devised the system. Rita herself was rarely known to exist by the denizens in Hell. Most thought her to be something of a legend, or a myth. After all, not many wanted to think that there could be something stronger than the Kusanada who could curb stomp any Togabito below number 50. Only Togabitos with ranks higher than 1000 were considered to be standard captain level or higher. The top 200 were all above standard captain level, and the top 50 were nightmares that only the strongest of Soul Reapers, like the Royal Guard, Anohana, and Yamamoto, were considered to be able to handle. The top 10 were even worse. Any member of the top 10 was considered a legend in their own right. Upon entering Hell, most Togabito naturally became stronger from the constant fighting and, of course, Togabito were resistant to Soul Reaper attacks, so even head captain Yamamoto using Bankai would be hard-pressed against a member of the top 10. As Talbumasuk had mentioned, he was number 3. His sensei, Aizen, was number 2. Sale, as Talbumasuk had mentioned, was number 288. Kira was number 209. The number 1 Togabito was scantly heard of. Many of the sinners, especially those not within the top 1000, didn't know spit about the strongest sinner. Many even started to consider that the number 1 spot, much like Rita, was also a myth. Aizen and Talbumasuk, the second and third strongest, were so powerful that no one wanted to consider how anyone could be more powerful than them consistently. Ranks below 1000 vibrated constantly, but once someone had secured themselves in the top 50, it had almost never changed. There were only a few facts known about the current number 1. Fact number 1, the current number 1's gender was unknown. Fact number 2, The current number 1 killed any Togabito he/she faced, and it was done so quickly his/her opponent often didn't know he/she was there or that he/she was the number 1 until it was too late. Fact number 3. The current number 1 kept his/her face concealed by a black mantle, allowing only his/her nose and lips to be seen, but no one could get close enough to tell much else. Fact number 4. The current number 1 had held his/her position for 148 years. Fact number 5. The current number 1 had the ability to become stronger by absorbing the powers of other Togabito by drinking their blood or absorbing cursed artifacts that often were taken into hell and placed in various circles. Fact number 6. The rest of the current top 20 had never had an encounter with the current number 1, and upon becoming the current number 1 slaughtered and took in the power of the former top 20 just to prove his/her ability. But enough about the number 1 and the high-tiered Togabito. The current matter at hand involved Sale and Kira wondering what to do next. They had been taken by surprise by Talbumasuk and now were wondering their next step. In hell, usually there were only 5 things to ever do: fight in the arena, run from Kusanada, kill other Togabito, reduce your sentencing by doing good deeds, or stir up your own fun. However, Sale and Kira didn't have to worry about stirring up their own fun. Fun just found them. Togabito number 188, Shuren appeared on top of a nearby cliff, along with his allies, Taken, number 241, Gunjo, number 266, Garagai, number 215, and Murakumo, number 322. Looks like we just found some new meat, Kira said, getting raring to go, but Sale grabbed his arm. Wait, his weaker, but more intelligent partner said, let's ask questions first. These men are strong, one stronger than you. Perhaps we can expand the size of our group. Kira dropped the animosity and let Sale do the talking. Greetings fellow Togabito, Sale spoke out, who are you all? You don't have to mind these dolts, Shuren said, stepping forward, but I am Shuren, Togabito number 188. I am the strongest Togabito predominant in circle number 5. You two seem strong. Yes, we do appear to be relatively on the same level, Zael pushed in his glasses. Is there something we can help you with, Shuren? My followers and I are after a common goal. We seek to free ourselves from hell. We will tear open a hell gate and escape this place, Shuren stated. Would you like to join us in our conquest? Escape hell and then what? Wreak havoc on the world of the living perhaps? Kira asked and laughed. No, better yet, we'll go into the Soul Society and kill those blasted Soul Reapers. No. Even better, we'll do both. Kira laughed maniacally. You want us? I'm in. Kira stated. Well, I don't want to be left alone, I guess I'm in too, Sale pushed in his glasses. What's the plan? The next day. 2 o'clock. Soul Society. Upon receiving Vera's report, Lelich mentioned this to the head captain and an emergency meeting was held between the captains. Lamperouge Lelich, please repeat to the rest of the captains what you told me, Yamamoto stated. Yes sir, Lelich stood up straight. I received a report from Yucatec Vera, currently stationed in the world of the living with Otamaka Kendra and Shiba Rukia, about a Togabito loose in the world of the living. A Togabito? Yucatec was surprised. This is a very serious matter, Anohana stated. This has never happened before, has it? She asked Yamamoto. No, it has not, Yamamoto glared. Could something be amiss in hell? Hitsugaya inquired. Quite unlikely, the Kusanada, the guardians of the gates, should have that place locked down. This might just be a one-time thing, Shunsui stated and was pretty much hoping for. Let us not jump to conclusions we cannot be certain of, Yamamoto thundered. Hiriko's group is still in Karakura town. If anything happens we can. We cannot. Yamamoto interrupted Lelich. When it comes to hell, holification is a serious matter. We cannot ask them to do anything of the sort. In the event of another attack, I would like this matter handled by Go-Di officers only if it means doing a shakedown run into hell. That includes the substitute Soul Reaper Kurosaki Ichigo, especially with the looming threat of Jinjo Kyujo drawing ever near. We must be ready in case these problems clash simultaneously. Lelich pondered the matter for a moment. So then, would it be alright if I took a small task force with me, namely the vice captains of my squad and Squad 7, Mastomoto Rangiku and Shapani Susanna. In the event of needing to go into hell, the three of us, plus my current advance unit, will take the matter into our hands. Things were silent for a little while until Yamamoto said, "That is agreeable if the captain of Squad 7 will also permit it." Yuna folded her arms. "I have no problem with it." "Then let it be. You are permitted to dispatch at your discretion, Lamperouge Teiko, but I would like you to leave as soon as possible," Yamamoto told him. "Yes sir," Lelich nodded. The captains were dismissed. Yamamoto went into his office and prepared to send a message to the Soul King to send a message to Rita to see if there was any trouble that she could make him aware of so that there could be more information given on the situation. It would take a few days to go through the proper channels and a few more to come back, but there was no harm in checking. Super-powered nobles, Zanpakuto rebelling, and now hell is having issues. I am seriously getting far too old for this kind of crap. 9 o'clock. Kurosaka Clinic. Ichigo stood alongside his sisters in front of his house as his dad waited for Ryukin to pull up in his car. The two were on their way to a national medical conference, an important trip that could be good for both the local clinic and the town hospital. For a bumbling father, Ishine certainly knew how to dress sharply. He was in a white business suit and white dress pants with a black dress shirt and a sharp red tie. Yuzo, as usual, was playing the motherly role. "You're sure you have everything you need, Ota-san? You have all of your clothes packed and all of your belongings?" "Yuzo, I'm fine," Ishine laughed. "Really? Just make sure." She puffed up her cheeks. She counted out on her fingers. "Watch." "Check." Ishine showed off his chrome analog watch. "Cell phone." "Check," Ishine said, pulling it out of his pocket. "Wallet with credit cards, business cards, and emergency cash." "Check." Ishine swapped the cell phone for the wallet. Ryukin honked the horn impatiently for the delay. "I'll be right there," Ishine shouted at the white-haired director. "Hold your horses." He sighed and then looked back at his children. "You kids be good, all right. Daddy will be back in about a week or so." "Oh, no, please, don't cut your trip short on our account," Karen said with a hint of sarcasm. "Maybe with you out of the house we might get some peace in the morning for once." That part she said seriously and with a smirk on her face. "You just enjoy your trip," Ichigo told his father. He and his dad gave each other a manly hug, and for once his father didn't try to put him in a headlock or something, possibly due to the fact that he didn't want to ruin his suit. Still holding on to his son, Ishine spoke to Ichigo. "I'm counting on you, boy. You're the man of the house while I'm gone." "Dad, nothing's going to happen, relax. You're acting like Britannia's going to invade the country or creatures from the depths of hell are going to rise up and attack us." Ichigo would soon learn that he shouldn't have said either of those things. Ishine let go of his son. "Well, you kids be good then," Ishine said, and then fumbled around in his pocket. "Let's see now," Ryukin honked again. I'm coming, keep your pants on." He continued to fumble and mumble as he searched his person. "Ah, here we are." He pulled out and put the keys to the family car in Ichigo's hand. "I know you still only have your permit," he leaned close and whispered to Ichigo, "but if you don't get pulled over it's like no one knows." He gave Ichigo a hearty pat on the shoulder. "Trust me, the only way that car's going to get wrecked is if Kyukaku gets near it," Ichigo stated with a smirk. Ryukin honked again. All right, Ishine said and grumbled as he carried his briefcase. "Have fun," Yuzo called. "And keep your hands off the nurses," Ichigo shouted. "We don't need a repeat of the 97 convention." "Why, what happened at the 97 convention?" Yuzo asked innocently. "Nothing you need to know," Ichigo waved his hand flippantly. Ishine got in the car, strapped himself in, gave a thumbs up to his kids and was gone. Ichigo then took a deep breath. "So, since Dad gave me the car, you guys wanna a lift to school?" "I'll take the bus thanks," Karen said. It wasn't that she didn't trust Ichigo's driving ability, but elementary school didn't start for a little while, and while Ichigo might have wanted to drive across town and get to school early, Karen preferred arriving 10 minutes to the bell. "I'll drive with you, Unii-chan," Yuzo brightened up. "Sure, get your things," Ichigo said. He and Yuzo piled into the car, but Ichigo stopped her as she tried to get into the passenger's seat. "Whoa, Back of the car, he jabbed his thumb behind him. You're not big enough yet, Yuzo. But Unii-chan, Yuzo whined. Hey, I'm already taking a risk on my permit by driving without dad in the car, besides you could get hurt by the airbag, Ichigo told her. Yuzo pouted, but did as she was told. She knew Ichigo meant well. As they drove they happened to pass Orium and Tatsuki, who were stopped at the same juncture Ichigo was at a red light for. He honked. Hey! He called. Hop in. After a bit of a discussion, which was brief since they had about 20 seconds to a minute, Tatsuki and Orium decided to pile into the car with Ichigo and take a chance. Orium got in the passenger's seat. Tatsuki got in back with Yuzo. The ride was mostly silent, but it was comfortable at least. Ichigo dropped Yuzu off at school first and then made his way to high school. He didn't have a parking permit, since he wasn't a senior, so he parked a few blocks down from the school by the park where there was plenty of public parking, and he, Tatsuki and Orium all piled into the school. They were much earlier for all three of them, and it was rare that they would arrive together, but stranger things had happened so no one paid much attention, except for perhaps Shinji and the other Vizards. Morning Ichigo, Shinji said to him. Morning Hirako, Ichigo greeted back. You seem in a good mood. I'm almost crushed to have to inadvertently kill it, Shinji laughed. And just what is that supposed to mean? Ichigo said crossly. Well, you see, I was talking to Kisuke this morning and apparently we've got some new arrivals, Shinji told him. Wonderful, Ichigo rolled his eyes. One of them is Rukia-san, I know that much, but the other two haven't been here before so they might have trouble adjusting, so you might have to play host, Hirako told him. Oh, that's great, Ichigo massaged his temples. You two seem to be in good spirits today, Uriah walked up to Shinji and Ichigo. Nice pun, Shinji leaned up against the wall. Uriah smirked. What's got you in a good mood? Ichigo asked. Besides the fact that I don't have to deal with my father's nagging for the next week or so, Uriah grinned, I'd say that. He jerked his head and Ichigo and Shinji looked down at the other side of the hall. Whoa, Shinji barely was able to get above a whisper. From the other side of the hall walked a woman looking about as young as Hirako did. She had long flowing brown hair and was dressed in the Karakura school uniform. It tugged tightly to her body, showing off her very slim, well-toned, model-like figure. Her breasts might have been smaller than Orium's by a large margin, but all the boys in the hallway, and some girls, including Chizuru, were following her with their eyes. She had a faint smile upon her face as the boys fell over in rows as if her hotness sent an arrow through their heart. Yes, the second floor finally got its lighting fixed, Uriah responded. Uriah, are your glasses on right? Shinji asked. I believe so, Uriah shot a troll face at Shinji. Screw you, dude, Shinji responded. There was silence in the hallway as the young woman approached Ichigo and Shinji. Been a while, Hirako, she winked at him, and good to see you too, Kurosaki. You two know this woman? Uriah was shocked. I don't think so, but, wait a minute, Hirako closed his eyes and examined the woman's face. I never forget the face of a pretty girl. He rubbed his chin only for him to finally recognize the riot so the young woman was emitting. Oh wow, Kendra, Shinji smiled widely, I hardly recognized you. Kendra. Ichigo's face was red. Kendra looked nothing like this when he saw her in the Soul Society. Who is she? Uriah stressed. Oh right, you weren't there, Ichigo scratched his head. This is... Kendra interrupted Ichigo and held out her hand to Uriah. Otomaka Kendra, Vice Captain of Squad 2. You must be the Quincy in this region, Mr. Uriah, Ishida Uriah shook Kendra's hand. His heart was beating fast a little, though Kendra tended to have that effect on most men. Hey, what's going on out here? Kigo poked his head out. What's with all the Lance? Kigo saw Kendra and the faint smile on her face, but to him it was like the glistening smile of a goddess. In his mind she was turning towards him as her long chocolate brown hair swished against her and blew him a kiss. None of this was, of course, actually happening. Hi. Kigo was speechless. Oh, yeah, this is Kigo. He's the normal one. Ichigo used quotes to signify that Kigo didn't have any knowledge of the other side. I see, seems like the usual members of your age group, she said, and then used the other door rather than asking Kigo to move to step inside. What are you all just going to completely ignore me? A voice called out from behind the group. Ichigo turned to see Rukia and another girl standing behind him, Shinji and Yuryu. Oh, Rukia, didn't even know you were there. So I noticed, she said. Who's your friend? Yuryu asked. Rukia gestured to Vera. This is Yuka. Take Vera, my koi in rank, but senpai in experience. Vera bowed in acknowledgement of her presence. She doesn't say much except when she's by herself. I was just explaining that to Feng-sensei. Ichigo hadn't been properly introduced to Vera before. Why? Is she shy? No one knows, not even Lelouch-sensei, Rukia responded. That's unusual, Ichigo scratched his head, that guy usually has all the answers. Wait, you said Yuka take, didn't you? Shinji asked. Oh, she's adopted. There was an incident about 40 years ago. I'd rather not talk about it here in a public place where just anyone can hear about it, Rukia said. Oh, I get it. You can tell us later, Shinji said. Yeah, at the same time we can meet up at the Urahara shop and you can tell us why you're here, Ichigo said. Of course, Rukia said. Inside the classroom, Kigo dragged his heels and walked up to Kendra as she stared out the window. It was the first time he had ever been shy around a woman. Usually, like Khan, he just leapt at a hot chick like a pervert, but it was like Kendra's charm was connected to her Ryutsu. Not really, but with the snail speed at which it took boys to approach her it sometimes seemed that way. Excuse me, miss. Kigo bowed his head. Kendra, Otomaka Kendra, Kendra said with a plain look on her face. Yes, Otomaka-san. Are you new here? Kigo asked. I just transferred from where Rukia-san is from. She's here too, you know, Kendra said. Oh, Rukia's back too, that's good to know, Kigo rubbed his head, so hey, if you're not busy, if you need to be shown around town or anything. Oh, that's fine, Kendra smiled faintly. She looked out into the hall. I think I already have an escort. Oh, yes, I suppose Rukia sort of knows her way around here, doesn't she? Kigo laughed nervously, not realizing that Kendra's eyes were honed in on Ichigo. Well hey, I'd love to buy you lunch if you're still settling down, you know, Kigo said. I know what you're trying to do, Kigo, Kendra looked right at him, it's not going to work. You're like all boys, she said and pressed her fingers up against Kigo's heart. You've been shot through the heart by love. Kendra was only pretending, but upon pretending to fire, Kigo went flying back into the wall. Kendra blew on her fingers. Ichigo and his friends had happened to see that. We're all in agreement that that just defied every bit of law of reality, or that Kigo is a drama queen, right? Ichigo asked. Everyone seemed to nod their heads. Soon the day got started and so iPhone introduced Kendra and Vera. Everyone already knew Rukia. Vera took a seat in the corner near Mizuru. Rukia sat in her usual spot behind Ichigo. Kendra took her seat on Ichigo's opposite side, Hirako sat on his right side. The seat was occupied originally, but when Kendra asked nicely, the student already sitting there was more than willing to give it to her. It was times like that that Kendra made use of her charms. From the other side of the room, Tatsuki was on edge. She thought Kendra might be up to something with Ichigo, but she just stared out the window for most of the class period, so Tatsuki dropped her guard. Kendra of course hadn't taken a seat next to Ichigo for more practical reasons than Tatsuki was thinking. While Yuryu was far more intelligent than Ichigo, he sat towards the front. Kendra knew that she'd have an easier time whispering to Ichigo for assistance if she needed help understanding something than if she sat next to the smarter students like Yuryu, Chad, or Orium. Also, she needed to stick close to Ichigo and Rukia so they could all meet up at Urahara's, as had been discussed, to explain, sort of, what they were doing there. Most of the mission was classified, but they were allowed to tell Ichigo the following: Kendra was a scout and that Ichigo shouldn't butt into her part of the mission. Rukia was to watch Ichigo and act as a messenger to him, from Kendra, if his help was required, which it would be explained that the time would come for that. Vera was the messenger back to Soul Society, and all three women were to work cooperatively and exchange information. School continued normally, well, normal for Kendra at least. Her experience took her back to her academy days, especially with all of the excessive chivalry that Rukia felt jealous of because Kendra was drawing students to her like bees to honey and was leaving Rukia out in the cold and feeling like a puppy that had lost its cuteness. True, Rukia was married, but the attention that Kendra was getting was the real issue since Rukia wanted to have the chance to turn down hopeless suitors too. Unlike Rukia, however, the constant chivalry was starting to get on Kendra's nerves. She was practically at her limit. And then, to make things worse, one of the many gangs that had beef with Ichigo had to show up at the school gates, demanding his presence. And, of all people, the leader was Needles, who had to be given credit for having the balls to go within 5 square meters of the fearsomely named Soul Reaper. The nickname had spread after Ichigo handed Needles his ass, so now Ichigo was considered a one-man army in the thug community. Ichigo laughed when he heard the nickname reach his ears through Mizuru at how appropriate he considered it. There was also a bounty to be paid by the local gang community for any gang that could beat Ichigo and bring back proof, like a photograph or something. It was like the gangs in Karakura Town, and the adjacent towns in the same county, were the Yakuza minor leagues. Needles was out for revenge on Ichigo. His defeat had been humiliating for him. Never mind the fact that Needles deserved every bit of what he got, but as things stood, at the time, Ichigo had only faced Needles and a few of his cronies. Today Needles was out for blood, and he brought every last member of his gang, a grand total of 106 gang members, and they were armed to the teeth, nunchucks, chains, shivs, brass knuckles. You name it. He had it, except for guns. Guns were illegal in the street gangs by the honor code. Yes, there was an honor code. Ichigo already heard the commotion from students. He, Yasutara, Chad the Mighty, Sato, Tatsuki, Noble Dragon, Arisawa, Mashiro Speed Demon Kuna, the Karakura Elite Four as they were known, were ready to go into battle. Since Kensei and Soifone were adults despite being relatively the same age as Mashiro, they were exempt from this honor code and gang system, as it were. The fact that it existed only gave Soifone a headache. She and Kensei couldn't do anything since this brawls weren't illegal, unless someone died. Shinji and Lisa just stayed out of things. It wasn't their style. However, before Ichigo and his troop could even go out there, Kendra began walking straight out towards the front of enemy lines. Shinji, who was waiting with Ichigo and the others even though he wasn't going to fight, smirked. Oh, this should be interesting. Ichigo was about to charge out to assist Kendra, but Shinji held him back. Hey, relax there, Mr. Hero. Kendra might look like a Yamato Nades Hiko without her Shiakusho, but she doesn't need anyone's help for a battle like this. Kendra stood right in front of Needles' group with her bag over her shoulder and stared them all right in the eyes. I'd like to get home, she said plainly. I'd like a lot of things, Toots, Needles chuckled. Tell you what, bring me Kurosaki and you can walk by. Or he looked up and down Kendra's body, maybe there's another way you can get by, he laughed. Kendra dropped her bag on the ground, picked it up and then tossed it back by where Ichigo was, being able to sense his Ryutsu. She then looked at Needles more seriously. I'm in a bad mood, she glared. Move. Come with us, we'll put you in a good mood, Needles chuckled. Right, boys? Laughter and nodding heads gave the consensus of agreement. Okay, that is it. I've had it with today. Kendra shouted. She disappeared faster than anyone could blink, knocked one thug away and grabbed his nunchucks. She then disappeared and strangled another guy with the borrowed weapon, spun and kicked 7 guys in the face. Her natural strength was almost on par with Ichigo's, almost, since Ichigo, being a male, was stronger, but she made up for that with her speed. Kendra leapt into the air as weapons of all sorts were thrown at her. With her bare hands she deflected every last one in under 3 seconds. She then tore towards the ground, swept 11 thugs off her feet and neck chopped them all out before delivering a kick towards her blind spot, whereupon her foot connected with one thug's groin. He was wearing a cup, but she smashed right through it. One guy came after her with a bat with nails in it. Kendra fractured his right arm and punched him in the face before elbowing the guy coming up from behind her. She dodged the incoming assault from behind her and elbow dropped him into the ground before leaping into the air and slamming towards her ground with her fist. The resulting shockwave, yes, there was a shockwave despite that she was using practically less than 2% of her spiritual power. She proceeded to knock out the 25 that were caught in her attack. Fucking bitch. Needles leapt at her to stab her in the neck, but left himself wide open as Kendra roundhouse kicked him in the stomach and, with the force behind it, kicked him into the wall alongside the schoolyard gate. Kendra wasn't the least bit tired. She had hoped that, with their boss down, the others would get scared and leave, but it just made them fight to avenge him. Kendra took no prisoners and either punched or kicked the remaining thugs down in under a minute. She then piled up the bodies and stood in front of them, fists clenched before screaming at the sky. Who else wants some? All of the onlookers were cheering. Whoa, Tatsuki was blown away. Amazing, Orium was in awe with white eyes. Scary, Shinji was off-put. Hot, Kigo and Lisa, though in different locations, all said aloud with flushed cheeks. Hoo-hoo. Go Otamaka-chan. Mashiro cheered. Some of the other students were now chanting her given name. Kendra was simply smiling and holding her arms in the air. This kind of praise she didn't mind. I love my life. She smirked to herself. The situation died down after about an hour. Using some rope from the sports shed, the Karakura Elite Four, and Kendra, helped tie Needless gang up. Remind me to stay on your good side, Ichigo told Kendra. Oh, trust me, even if you were, I was just pissed off a while ago, Kendra said. Ichigo simply swallowed. I'm kidding, Kendra smirked, I can distinguish friend from foe. You all seem like you're settling in well. I know that voice. Ichigo turned to see, coming into the school grounds, Lelouch, Rangiku, and Susanna. Gang troubles again, Ichigo? Lelouch asked. Ichigo didn't lift a finger. Tatsuki pointed to Kendra. We've got a solid hardcore female badass with us. Well, Kendra is known for being able to cleave through legions of hollows on her own. This doesn't surprise me in the least, Lelouch smirked. Never mind that, Ichigo said, standing up straight. What are you doing here? Plans have changed. I've come here with Rangiku and Susanna to keep you all informed of the situation. Let's finish up here and meet at Urahara's, Lelouch urged. Everyone agreed that this was a good idea. At the shop, with Ichigo, his nakama, which included Shinji, who affiliated himself more with Ichigo lately than the other Vizards, as well as the other Soul Reapers, Lelouch explained to Ichigo about the hell creature that had escaped and been defeated. Sounds like trouble, Shinji stated. It could just be a big nothing, but the head captain doesn't want to take any chances. If nothing happens within a week, we're packing up and going home. Rangiku, Susanna, and I will at least. In the meantime, Kendra, you and I are going to be staying with Ichigo. He looked at the teen, with your approval of course. Ichigo nodded dully, yeah, no problem, there's room for two at my place. Orium, would it trouble you to let Susanna and Rangiku stay with you like before? Lelouch asked her. It's not a problem at all, Lamperouge-kun, Orium said all bubbly. What about Rukia and Vera? Tatsuki asked. Vera pointed at the ground. Vera's going to stay here. Lelouch said. As for Rukia, that's up to her. She's welcome at my place, Tatsuki leaned back. My parents went to the Britannia area formerly known as Mexico for the week for their anniversary, so I've got extra space. Sounds like we're good then, Ichigo got to his feet. For now at least, Rukia commented. Kurosaka Clinic. Yuzu and Karen were already home since the elementary schools let out first. They were surprised when Ichigo introduced them to Kendra and Lelouch as house guests. Karen, for a reason Ichigo couldn't figure out, had a hard time keeping her composure in front of Lelouch. Lelouch, of course, knew exactly the reason. Not a word, he told Iin Tamashi. Hey, I made that joke a long time ago, no reason to repeat myself. In the evening, Lelouch took up residence in the family clinic, finding the hospital beds very comfortable. Considering how many times you've been in the 4th division, that's not a surprise. Oh, now you have a clever comment. Kendra, Ichigo soon found, was taking his parents' bedroom. Needless to say, things got a little bit hectic because of that. You can't sleep in here, he told her crossly. Why not? You said your dad was out for the week, Kendra stated. I won't mess anything up if that's what you're worried about. This isn't about leaving things the way they are. Go sleep on the couch or something. At the very least I think I can arrange something in my closet the way Rukia did, but my parents' bedroom is off limits, he scowled. Kendra spied the picture frame of Masaki on his Heinz night table. She'd already seen the giant poster down in the living room. When she tried to pick it up, Ichigo actually punched her to the ground. I said get out, he shouted. Whoa there, Kendra got to her feet. She seemed to not even be mad about the punch. Cool it Oedipus Rex, she joked, sheesh what's your problem? Just cause your mom used to be in here this place is automatically some shrine that even friends and acquaintances can't so much as sniff the air in here. Don't make jokes, Ichigo growled. I heard about Masaki. Word spreads in the Soul Society pretty quickly. You can't go through life harping on your mother's death all the time. You think I take anger out on anyone that takes my sister's old bedroom in the Soul Society in 10th Division? Kendra asked. It's not the same. Ichigo asked. Oh, it's not. Kendra asked with offended sarcasm and stood close to him. Explain it to me because I was very attached, if not closer, to my sister than you were to your mother. You weren't responsible for your sister's death, Ichigo scowled. Kendra slapped him. Ichigo was surprised. True, he deserved a slap after hitting her, but not a while after the fact, and for some reason he had a gut feeling that's not why he was getting slapped either. When are you going to grow up and quit blaming yourself for something that obviously is not your fault? We have a file on you in the Soul Society, which I read at length before this mission. You got your revenge. You slew the hollow that killed her. You can always feel bad and miss your mother, but stop acting like your life fell apart just because she's gone. It's been 6 years, Ichigo. It took me 4 for me to move on from Takako. It hurts that she's gone, every day I miss her, but the past cannot be changed. You can't go through life with a constant scowl on your face and tell it to fuck off. You're the one who told me we have to live life as best we can. You trained under Lelich, didn't he ever teach you it's not good to live or harp on the past? That's one of the first lessons he usually teaches to those he takes under his wing. You make it sound so easy, Ichigo smiled crookedly. So did you when you said to me what you did almost a week ago, Kendra told him. She held out her hand. If it's too hard, I'm right here, and of course, you have all your other friends too. Orium lost her brother and I lost my sister. You're not the only one that's ever suffered a great loss and puts his or herself down over it that you know. We're all sailing on the same ship of life, so let's keep ourselves on deck and not fall overboard. Okay. Okay, Ichigo shook Kendra's hand. They smiled at each other. Ichigo then headed for the door. You can stay here. Just don't touch my parents' things. I'm going to head to bed. Have a pleasant night, Kendra told him. The door closed. Kendra settled down in the master bedroom of the Kurosaki household and stared up at the ceiling. She then turned on her side and fell asleep. Here's to your new mission, Kendra, she told herself, let's make it a good one. End of chapter 106. Chapter 107, Kendra and Ichigo, the truth between them. Third-person POV. Ichigo woke up that morning in a surprisingly good mood, and why not? After all, his dad was away on business and he had the family car under lock and key. All things considered, it looked like it was going to be a pretty good day for the teen. Or at least it was until he heard Kendra on a rampage for some odd reason. I will choke the life out of you. Ichigo looked around his room. The lack of the sight of Kon told him what he could expect. Walking into his parents' bedroom, he saw Kendra strangling Kon with a pair of her panties sitting on the floor. There was a towel on the bed, and it didn't take Ichigo long to realize that Kendra was in the buff, having just gotten out of the shower, and was choking Kon for obviously trying to run off or do something perverted with her unmentionables. At hearing the door turn, Kendra and Ichigo stared at each other, blinking. Ichigo instantly put his arm up over his eyes. Omigo Dimsuri, he said quickly. He proceeded to slam the door only to get Kon thrown at his face like a missile. The impact was not downy soft. Kendra slammed the door. Knock next time, she raged. Unii-chan, is everything alright? Yuzu asked. Yeah, never better, Ichigo said, getting his feet, removing Kon from his face, who had gone limp in Yuzu's presence. Keep a better on your things, would you? He handed the mod soul off to his sister. I'm going to jump in the shower. Unlike his parents' bedroom, Ichigo and his sisters had to use a shared bathroom, often resulting in Ichigo helping to wash the twins, especially when they were younger. Ichigo was, of course, surprised to find the door locked. He knocked. That you, Ichigo? It was Lelouch. Yeah, you gonna be much longer? Ichigo asked. Almost done. I had to clean toothpaste off the wall. I got alarmed when Kendra started shouting, Lelouch stated. Alright, Ichigo went back to his room to grab his undershirt for the day. He always wore a t-shirt under his uniform, damn thing was itchy otherwise. When he got the all clear from Lelouch, Ichigo took to the bathroom himself. Downstairs at the breakfast table, Yuzu was serving poached eggs and crispy bacon. Lelouch asked if the paper had arrived for the morning. Karen volunteered to go get it from the front steps. Any coffee in the house? Lelouch asked. There should be. Ota-san always keeps some, just in case, Yuzu stated. Lelouch made himself some coffee, added some milk, sat at the table and began looking through the paper to see if there was anything in the news about Britannia. His living counterpart would be 2 years old in December, so these were the years that Lelouch had no record as to the history and, of course, information was everything to the man. Kendra came down a little while later and seemed a little shaken up. What happened? Lelouch asked her. Kendra took notice of Yuzu and Karen still skittering about the kitchen, so rather than alert them to the supernatural, just made something up. Oh, just practicing for the theater group, she said with a forced, but genuine-looking cheery smile. I didn't expect Ichigo to walk in on me though. Well, it's not like he knew you'd just gotten out of the shower. Lelouch turned the page. Unii-chan did what? Relax, it was an accident. We all make mistakes, Kendra said. She smelled the aroma from Lelouch's coffee. Is there more where that came from? Lelouch pointed to the pot and cream on the counter. Help yourself, he gestured. Meanwhile, things were a little bit less wild over at Orium's place. Okay, maybe not. Like Ichigo's house, all 3 women had to share the same bathroom and Rangiku, the first one up, was still using it. Hurry it up. I have to pee. Susanna whined, standing with her legs crossed, doing a little dance. Hey, beauty like mine takes high maintenance. Don't worry, I'm almost done, Rangiku told her. Orium, as it was, had just gotten up out of bed and saw Susanna standing in front of the door holding her stomach. Is everything all right? She asked, rubbing her eye, bed hair abound. Rangiku won't get out of the bathroom. She's been in there a really long time, Susanna groaned. Well, there's still about an hour before we have to leave. It's not like we'll be late, Orium stated. I know that, but, Susanna was going to say more, but started panicking when Orium started pouring herself a glass of God knows what kind of juice. However, the sound of rushing liquid was not helping Susanna's predicament in the least. Thankfully, Rangiku waltzed out of the room. Susanna rudely shoved her aside, slammed the door, locked it and sat down on the toilet to relieve herself, leaving a shocked Rangiku out in the hall. Rangiku-san, do you want some wasabi and pickle pancakes with some red bean paste and mint jelly? Orium asked. That sounds great. Rangiku exclaimed. Sure, coming right up, Orium beamed. Rukia and Tatsuki were at least having a far more normal morning, to a degree. Tatsuki was currently showering, having come back from an early morning jog, and Rukia had just woken up. Since there was more than one bathroom in the Arisawa house, Rukia wasn't having the same problem as Susanna. After her shower though, Rukia, after stepping out of the shower, stood in front of the sink to brush her hair and dry it out, only to take notice of a most curious small, trapezoid-shaped bottle with amber liquid in it. She read the label Perfume. She pronounced incorrectly. She read the directions and knocked on Tatsuki's bathroom. Hey, Tatsuki, what's this Perfume stuff for? What? Tatsuki asked, currently brushing her hair. There's this little trapezoid amber bottle on your mom's side of the... Put that back where you found it, Tatsuki told her. That's my mom's favorite bottle of perfume. Oh, that's how you pronounce it. What's it for? Rukia asked. Put it back and I'll explain it to you. That bottle is 4,000 yen, Tatsuki urged. Okay, I'm back. The sound of shattering glass sent a wave of dread up Tatsuki's spine. She opened the door. Rukia had, unfortunately, tripped and the bottle had gone flying and shattered on the ground. My mom's perfume. Tatsuki had a feeling her wallet was about to become a lot lighter after school. At the Urahara shop, Vera was sitting and eating with Hinta and Yururu. Tessai was working the stove. You don't say much, do you? Hinta said, elbow on the table looking at Vera. Vera continued to eat her ramen in silence. Geez, you're more antisocial than Yururu. He wrapped his fingers on the wooden table and then looked over to Tessai. How much longer till my portion? It's coming, hold your horses, Tessai told him. Hinta sighed and folded his arms and crossed his legs. He had to think of something to do. Normally guests that dropped by the shop from the Soul Society were a lot more talkative and Vera's silence was driving the kid crazy. He then thought of an idea. Hey, Yururu, I'll bet you 2,000 yen I can get our guest to say more than 3 words before she finishes her meal. Okay, Yururu said passively. Just as Hinta was about to say something to Vera, though, she slurped up the last of her noodles, put the bowl down and stood up. You lose, she said. She waltzed over to the sink, rinsed out her dish and left the dining room. Yururu held out her hand for Hinta to pay up. With a growl he slapped the bills in her hand. At Soken's house, where his grandson, Yuraju, lived, the mentioned teen was finishing getting ready for school. Oh, Yuraju, before you leave, Soken said as Yuraju proceeded to head out the door. What is it? Soken handed Yuraju a slip of paper. Please bring my medication from the pharmacy to me after school. I would appreciate it. Of course, Yuraju smiled. He shut the door and headed on out. I really should be thinking about looking for a home for Gi-san. First I need to find a job so I can pay the bills that come in. Yuraju's grandfather was 98 and a half. Yuraju had been taking care of his grandfather ever since the young man had turned 11 and was now doing his best to keep his grandfather as healthy as possible, but he knew it was only a matter of time before his grandfather bit the big one. His dad had told him that Soken, while healthy for his age, would probably pass on within the year unless Yuraju could pay up the cash to have his grandfather hooked up to some oxygen, but Yuraju had not the money nor the ability to get said money, and his father said he'd rather let Soken go in peace rather than extending his life, since it would only give him 5 years at best. Yuraju and Soken had a big argument over the fact, but Soken said that whether it was 6 months or 5 years he didn't care. He had lived a long life and when his time came that would be the end of it. Yuraju's only hope was that his father would come back before his grandfather snuffed it so that his father could attend the funeral. Yuraju was keeping careful watch of his grandfather's condition and he believed he could be on death's door any day now. Yuraju walked to school only to see Kojima Mizuhiro come out of a nearby house down the block. Don't you live on the other side of Onos River? Yuraju asked Mizuhiro, surprised to see him. Huh? Oh, Ishida, didn't see you there. Mizuhiro rubbed his head. Yuraju was smart enough to put 2 and 2 together. He pushed in his glasses, and just which poor widow or mature woman's heart did you break this time? Oh come on, don't say it like that, Mizuhiro told him, slightly embarrassed. Well, at the very least, it'll be nice to have someone to talk to on the way to school, Yuraju stated. I suppose. Mizuhiro put away his phone. So how's your grandfather? While Yuraju and Mizuhiro engaged in casual conversation, Kigo was having a rougher morning than Susanna. His sister was on her period and every step Kigo took had to be treaded carefully so as not to set her off. He was currently in his room getting dressed. As he did, he looked up at the guitar that hung on the wall. It was made of birchwood and he had won it in a contest when he was 7. It was his prized possession, but his sister always got in a fit whenever he played it since Kigo was pretty bad at it. Chad had offered to teach him, but Kigo was afraid Chad might break the guitar by accident, and since Chad didn't have a guitar of his own to show Kigo, that threw that idea out the window. He was trying to earn money for lessons, but he hadn't even gotten enough, with all of the other things he used his cash on, for even a third of one lesson. Kigo sighed as he laced up his shoes. Someday I'll be able to play it, someday. Speaking of Chad, the gentle giant stopped on his way to school to feed a homeless cat. He had thought to take the cat home with him, but knew he didn't have the expenses to take care of a pet. So, despite how adorable it was, with a heavy heart, he continued to school. Of all those going to Karakura High School, it had to be the Vizards having the worst morning. Shinji banged on the door to the second-floor bathroom. "Come on Lisa, open up, I know you're staying in there just to screw with me." "Says you," the glasses-wearing Vizard barked back, "I happen to be shaving my legs." "Well, hurry it up, you're not the only one who lives here," Shinji complained. "You could just go upstairs," Lisa told him. "Kensei's occupying that one, now would you hurry it up?" Shinji asked. "Hey! Shinji!" Mashiro called out to him. "What?" Shinji looked over to her. "Hey, so, I was trying to fix the transmission like Rose told me to do, but now the car won't start up," she told him. "What do you mean the car won't start up?" Shinji asked. "No. The car's too young to be smoking," Rose shouted. Shinji palmed his face. "Okay Lisa, now you'd better hurry it along, we have to take public transportation today." On the other side of town, across the street from the Urahara shop, So iPhone was getting ready to walk out the door. She was showered, dressed, fed, and prepared for class. "I'll see you after classes are over," So iPhone said, turning towards Yoriyuki, who was sitting on the couch watching TV, remote in her hand. Yoriyuki smiled at her lover. "Have a great day, B." "You know I will," So iPhone told her. Yoriyuki stood up and stretched. "Say, as long as you're going out, mind dropping me off somewhere?" Of course, So iPhone was more than willing to drive Yoriyuki anywhere she wanted. She was confused though when Yoriyuki had her stop in front of a fancy spa. This is. "I'm applying for a job," Yoriyuki said from the passenger's seat. So iPhone was surprised to hear this and looked at Yoriyuki. "B, but I said." "I know what you said, B, but it's just not fair for me to not pull my own weight around while you do all the work." For the longest time it was amusing, but now, Yoriyuki looked solemn. "Now it feels like I'm taking advantage of you. So let me do this, you keep paying the bills and I'll save up some money so we can retire from this middle-class life and set ourselves up on an island home, never having to work a day for the rest of our lives," Yoriyuki told her. "Come on, what do ya say?" So iPhone smiled with pink cheeks. "I'd like that." She and Yoriyuki locked lips and Yoriyuki got out of the car. "I'll see you later tonight, hopefully employed." "Best of luck to you, Yoriyuki," So iPhone smiled at her. "Thanks, B, see you later," Yoriyuki smiled back. With that, So iPhone drove off to the high school. Back at the Kurosaka clinic, Ichigo, Lelouch, and Kendra were all piling into the car. Kendra at least looked like a responsible adult. At the very least she could pass for being older than Ichigo or Lelouch, so she sat in front next to Ichigo so he didn't have to risk his permit. Lelouch sat behind Ichigo and leaned back, legs crossed, and hands behind his head. As Ichigo drove, Lelouch asked, "Hey, do you know if there's any underground game playing done in these parts?" "What do you mean?" Ichigo asked. "When I was alive I used to play in chess tournaments against people for cash. They got something like that around here, maybe with Go or Shogi." Lelouch wanted to know. "The only underground I know about is the freaking Yakuza minor leagues," Ichigo grumbled. "And no big then, only an inquiry," Lelouch said. "Would you seriously skip class to compete if I said yes?" Ichigo wanted to know. "Red light," Lelouch pointed rather than answering the question. Ichigo slammed on the brakes. The anxiety made him completely forget his question. He, Kendra, and Lelouch arrived same time Ichigo had arrived the day before. Tatsuki, Orium, and the girls, minus Vera who had arrived much earlier, arrived 10 minutes later. Speaking of Vera, she was sitting under a tree, by herself, waiting for Rukia and the others. "Vera, just because you're new doesn't mean you have to sit outside and wait for us." Rukia reached down for her subordinate to get her to her feet. "Feng-sensei's always here early and the classroom is open." Vera didn't say anything, but acknowledged Rukia's statement. Inside, Ichigo was surprised that Shinji was nowhere in sight. Usually he was here before anyone else since Kensei and Rose were both teachers. "Morning Kurosaki," Uriah said to Ichigo as he passed him in the hallway. "Oh, Ishida, morning," Ichigo said to the Quincy. "Have you seen Hirako and the others this morning?" Uriah shook his head. "No, sorry. As if on cue, Ichigo got a text from Hirako. Speak of the devil. Ichigo clicked open the text. Car broke down, arrow. Will be late, tell sensei. Hirako. Poor guy. Ichigo put his phone away. Morning, Ichigo. Ichigo recognized Mizuro's voice. Oh, hey, morning, you're here earlier than usual, Ichigo said. As Ichigo and Mizuro broke out into conversation, Vera suddenly began inching her way towards the girls' bathroom, trying not to be noticed. Vera. Rukia turned her head by the time the girl was out of sight. She followed Vera into the bathroom. She found the girl splashing water on her face. Hey, is something the matter? Rukia asked her. Vera didn't respond and just continued to splash water on her face. Rukia checked the other stalls to make sure no one else was in the bathroom. She looked in the mirror and looked at Vera, who was staring at her wet, slightly red face. Are you blushing? Rukia asked. Vera grabbed a paper towel and buried her face in it to dry her face, rubbing it fiercely against her skin. Hey, don't do that so roughly, you'll irritate your skin. Rukia grabbed Vera's wrist and the paper towel dropped from her face. She was red in the cheeks. You are blushing. What for? Vera turned around and buried her face in her hands. Oh, I see now, Rukia picked up, you have a crush on someone here at the high school, is that it? Vera nodded to that at least. Rukia knew Vera would never answer her as to who it was. So she simply said, well, there's no reason to hide from whoever it is. Come on, Rukia tugged on her wrist. Vera pulled away. Come on, Vera, you can't spend all day in the bathroom. Lelouch-sensei would be very disappointed in you. Rukia's guilt trip managed to get Vera to cooperate. As things turned out, Shinji and the others managed to get to school on time. In class, 5 minutes before the bell, Rukia was trying to deduce who it was that Vera had a crush on. At the same time, Tatsuki was glaring at Kendra as she had a casual conversation with Ichigo about Japanese cultural norms. It wasn't so much that they were getting along, but so much that, at the same time, Orium wasn't paying much attention to it at all. Susanna was sitting in the back of the room next to Lelouch, and Rangiku sat right in the center, using the same bit as Kendra to get the seat she wanted. A lot of the boys in Ichigo's class were unconscious from having two hot chicks in the same room in close proximity of one another. Many didn't know whether or not to approach Rangiku or Kendra or both. Rangiku had her hypnotizing bosom and Kendra had her absolutely to die for body shape. Geez, you'd think the guys in here were all virgins the way they're ogling those two, Shinji joked. It's natural for boys to be curious, Lisa said, reading an erotic magazine. Remember when they were looking at me on my first day? Oh yeah, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, Shinji teased. Jerk, Lisa responded. Skank, Shinji shot back. Beaver, she sent back. Easy. Pervert. You're one to talk, Shinji ended the match. The shenanigans stopped the moment So-iPhone walked in. The woman's presence was like a drill sergeant walking into an unruly barracks. Everyone that was acting out, shut up, sat up straight in their chairs and waited for her to begin the lesson. For this very reason, class control, the principal was considering giving So-iPhone tenure when the time was appropriate. True, So-iPhone had only taken the job to watch over Ichigo at Yoriyuki's request, but, for some reason, she seemed to like teaching. She figured she might make good on that request. All right, let's begin the lecture, she said to everyone. School was normal for the most part. If you could call Rangiku getting 3 free meals from boys trying to impress her, Kendra nearly getting detention for punching a guy in the face that tried to grope her, and Lelouch geesing a kid to strip down to his underwear and sing the Brighton national anthem out in the schoolyard as retribution for bullying Susanna behind his back normal. The truly odd thing though was how easily Kendra and Ichigo were getting along. Despite the incident the night before and this morning, the two had been having non-stop casual conversations about Japan, the culture, and sharing amusing anecdotes with each other. Together, as Ichigo, his nakama that had Ryutsu, and the Soul Reaper Advance Unit walked out to leave the school grounds, Kendra lamented to Ichigo. Your school is so boring. Oh, I'm sorry we aren't firing lasers and whacking people with Shina, he said sarcastically. If I had known you'd be coming, I'd have called the Empress and kindly asked her to make special arrangements. Kendra got offended and pushed Ichigo in the arm. Hey, That wasn't everything I learned at the academy. She looked up and stroked her chin with her finger, although I suppose that did make it more enjoyable. Never thought I'd live to see the day, Shinji said to the rest of the group. What? Rukia asked him. Kendra is one of the most professional Soul Reapers ever. It's weird seeing her act so. He was trying to think of the right word. Girly. Lisa asked. Friendly. Lelich guessed. Vulnerable. Tatsuki tried. Normal, Shinji answered. Those two have really hit it off, Orium smiled, just like Shiba-san did with Ichigo when she first came here. I don't know, Rangiku chimed, I think things look a lot different if you ask me. You'd better watch out Orium, Kendra might steal your boyfriend from you. Rangiku was joking of course, but it still set Tatsuki off regardless. Don't ever say that. Not even jokingly. She stomped her foot, flexed her arm and pushed out her chest. Orium and Ichigo are a destined match. Come hell or high water nothing will tear them apart. Nice speech, Lelich praised, seeing as, if he were in Tatsuki's shoes, he might have said something similar. Hey Miss Prophet, Shinji teased Tatsuki, might want to tell that to the two chuckleheads over there. He jerked his head over to Kendra and Ichigo. Everyone turned towards them and, much to the surprise and awe of many, both Kendra and Ichigo were chuckling. Tatsuki was stunned. He's laughing, her mouth was opened slightly. For the longest time, Ichigo had never laughed, ever. He might smile, beam or grin, he'd done more of that ever since Orium showed up, but he'd never laughed like he was now. He might have a case of schadenfreude every now and then, but he hadn't laughed so genuinely and so soft-heartedly in such a long time. Seeing this, and realizing the same thing as Tatsuki, Orium ran off. Ah, Orium. Let's go after her, Rukia told Tatsuki. The teen agreed. Orium was going to need a pep talk from her closest friends. Rukia and Tatsuki found Orium doing her best, trying not to break down a few blocks away, sitting on a park bench. She was staring down at the floor. Otamaka-san, makes Ichigo laugh. Orium was talking normally, but if Tatsuki or Rukia could see her face they'd be able to see the pained jealousy on Orium's face. Rukia and Tatsuki sat next to Orium. Tatsuki sat on her right, Rukia on her left. That doesn't mean anything. This means nothing, Rukia told her, you're Ichigo's girlfriend. He'd never betray you. If he does, you know I'll make him pay, Tatsuki threatened. I know, but, what if Otamaka-san is a better match for Ichigo, Orium said, when I think about that Tears splashed her hands, it hurts. I just want Ichigo to be happy, but at the same time, I like being with him. Orium's head sunk lower. I don't know what I'd do. Ichigo, you'd better fix this or you are so dead. Tatsuki thought to herself. Anyone who made Orium cry answered to her, that included Ichigo. Hey come on Orium, she rubbed her friend's back, I'm sure it's not what you think. I agree with Tatsuki, it's not the end of the world. Ichigo hasn't come out and said he prefers Otamaka Fukutaiko. As far as can be said right now, you're still the one he likes, Rukia told her. Orium gripped her arms, I know but if they have a better chemistry then. Tatsuki, having enough of her friend being down on herself, bunked her on the head. Ow. Orium rubbed her head. Even if he does, what good is moping about it going to do? Tatsuki asked her. If you want Ichigo to stay with you, you should fight for him. But. Orium was a class A pacifist. She means you should stand up for yourself and give your position, Rukia told her. Yeah, seriously, unless I used my powers even I wouldn't want to get into the ring with Kendra, Tatsuki rubbed the back of her head. Well, she is a trained assassin after all, Rukia stated. Upon hearing this, Orium's imaginative mind started thinking strange thoughts, and she started thinking about Kendra being a wily woman from a faraway land and Ichigo a soldier in the army, and Kendra was a spy trying to get close to Ichigo so she could kill him. She abruptly rose to her feet. Look out, she's gonna kill you. Orium only then realized that she had been daydreaming. Rukia and Tatsuki both pushed down on her shoulders and had Orium replace her bum back onto the park bench. So can you do it? Tatsuki asked. Do what, again? Orium scratched her head. Confront Ichigo, Mark your territory, girl. Tell Oda Makafuku that he's your property, Rukia bolstered. But at the very least, you can't let this ruin the great relationship you have with Ichigo. Tatsuki put her elbow around the back of Orium's neck and let her arm hang off the busted teen's shoulders. Think of all the good times you two have had together. Are you going to let something like this ruin such a great relationship? Orium thought about it, and she thought about the great relationship between Ichigo and Kendra that was slowly forming. She didn't want to keep them from becoming friends, but at the same time, I just want to be with Ichigo. Orium said to herself. Her eyes became confident. She stood on her feet. You're right, I have to confront Ichigo. I need to make sure our relationship is stable. Atta girl, Tatsuki elbowed her lightly in the side of her right breast. You march right up to Ichigo and tell him how you feel. Yeah, I'll march right up to Ichigo, look him straight in the eye and I'll tell him. Orium stopped as her stomach started rumbling. I'm hungry, she said. Tatsuki and Rukia both sighed in aggravation, but figured that they'd best get food. Forcing Orium to do this on an empty stomach was an argument neither one of them wanted to get into. Besides, Tatsuki also had to replace her mom's perfume and they could kill two birds with one stone. Halfway across town, Ichigo sneezed. Bless you, Kendra told him. Thanks, Ichigo massaged his nose and looked around, only to notice that he and Kendra were alone in the middle of town. When did we get separated from everyone else? Ichigo asked. Oh, they all had things to do, Kendra half lied. In truth, she and Ichigo had been walking and talking with no care for their surroundings other than the streetlights. But never mind them, what's there to do for fun around here? Ichigo was quick to answer, well, there's the arcade, though I don't know if that's up to your tastes. There's basketball courts and... What is this basketball you speak of? Kendra asked, interested. I'll show and explain it to you, follow me. Ichigo led Kendra to a sports facility in town. Ichigo had some clothes in his locker since he made use of the facility every now and again. He paid for Kendra, and for her to rent some clothes, and the two made it out onto the court out back. Ichigo was dressed in purple and gold with the number 15 and Kendra was wearing red and white with the number 2. Ichigo taught her the basics, dribbling techniques, shooting techniques, fake outs, etc. He mentioned passing, but since it was only the two of them they didn't need to worry about that. Kendra was tall for a girl, 174 centimeters, so Ichigo didn't have as much of a height advantage of her as he would say Tatsuki, 155 centimeters. Ichigo started with the ball and stood in mid-court. What are we playing to? Kendra asked him. I don't know, first 5 baskets wins. Ichigo proposed. Sounds like fun, Kendra said. She moved quicker than Ichigo could blink, stole the ball from him, dribbled to the basket and did a layup into the net. Smirking, she tossed him the ball. Looks like I gotta keep my eyes peeled with you, Ichigo said, dribbling. He darted forward. Kendra tried to block him. Ichigo juked around her and then slam dunked into the basket. As one could expect, the game went on like this until it got to be 4-4, with Kendra having the ball. She began by zigzagging across the court towards the basket, but as she neared, Ichigo reached out just far enough to get the ball from her, dribbled back to half court and, before Kendra could get back at him, took a faithful 3-throw. Luck seemed to be smiling on the teen as the ball hit the backboard and fell into the net. Good game, he told Kendra. Thanks, she said with a smile, that was fun. Ichigo tossed her the ball, best 2 out of 3. He asked. Kendra smiled, sure. The pair played another set, which Kendra won, and then Ichigo won the third set. After that he was pretty beat, so both had showers in the locker room and then prepared to head back to the clinic. Or at least that was Ichigo's intention, but Kendra kept dragging him everywhere, interested in so many different things. She didn't go to the world of the living often, so this was a treat for her and she was enjoying just seeing the town. They went to the arcade, spent a little bit of time at the aquarium. Ichigo showed her the festival grounds for the cosplay festival, which he was determined not to miss this time. Eventually they went back to the school grounds for Ichigo to get his car. Kendra smiled all the way back home. She had had a really good time. As Ichigo closed the garage door, Kendra stood by the front door smiling. The sun was beginning to set over the horizon. Thanks for today, Ichigo. I had a really good time, she told him. Hey, no problem. I wish Rukia would have been as interested in seeing everything as you were today, Ichigo remarked. Kendra simply continued to smile. Say, Ichigo, would you go to bat for me if I were ever in trouble? Huh? Of course. I'd do that for all of my friends. The last word echoed in Kendra's mind. An autumn wind blew by her and she seemed a little in shock. Hey, Kendra, are you okay? Ichigo was shaking her shoulder. Kendra turned her head from Ichigo, hiding a tear that was trickling down her face, and pushed his hand off her shoulder. I'm going inside, she said, choking back more tears. Kendra, is something wrong? Ichigo asked. Kendra simply went inside without another word and slammed the door. What did I say? Ichigo rubbed his head. Inside, upstairs, Kendra was metaphorically beating herself up. She lay on Ichigo's parents' bed with her arm over her eyes. I'm so stupid, she said, trying not to cry. Of course he'd never think of me as more than a friend. He already has a girlfriend. Really, Kendra, she talked to herself, just what were you expecting? Back outside, Ichigo was still wondering what he said or did wrong when he heard someone call out to him. Ichigo. The teen turned his head to see Orium standing where she was. Huh? Oh, Orium, are you okay? You seem troubled. I came to ask you something. Orium's eyes were serious, not like anything Ichigo had ever seen in her eyes before, at least not directed at him. What's wrong? He asked. I have to know, are we still together? She asked. Orium's eyes turned soft as she approached her boyfriend. She began looking at the ground in different directions. I mean, if you prefer it that Otamaca-san was your girlfriend, I'm okay with it, but... Kendra is my girlfriend, but why would she? The events of the entire day began playing out in Ichigo's head like a soundless black and white movie reel, and he realized how that must have looked to the others. Orium began talking faster. I should probably go. Otamaca-san's probably inside waiting for you, and Orium stopped talking when Ichigo rushed forward and put his arms around her. Ichigo. Kendra-san and I are just friends, Orium, I swear to you, he told her. He smiled. I was just trying to show her a good time, trying to help her culturally adapt, like I did with Rukia. I guess I should have said something. Orium's eyes watered with joy. Yes, that's just like Ichigo. He's just that sort of person. Orium started to cry. She buried herself in Ichigo's chest. Hey, what did I say? Ichigo panicked. It's just that I'm so sorry, Orium sobbed. You were just trying to be nice to Otamaca-san and I thought she was trying to take you away from me. Ichigo held Orium to his embrace. You're so silly, he told her and kissed her cheek. I am, Orium giggled, feeling better because of the kiss. Ichigo surprised her by kissing her on the mouth so suddenly. When they broke away, he put his hands on Orium's shoulders and told her, there's no reason for you to ever feel jealous, Orium, or feel like I'd set my eyes on anyone else. I don't want anyone else, Orium. I want you, he told her and smiled at her. You're my girl. Orium wrapped her arms tightly around Ichigo in response, and he held her close in response to her response. He then put his hand on her cheek and kissed her passionately. The two lovebirds stood out there in the crisp September air until the sun sank beneath the sky. Orium went home that evening feeling like the luckiest girl in the world. Ichigo walked away as she stood at her apartment door, and he headed back to his house. He waved goodbye to her and she simply smiled. He really is everything I thought he would be. Ichigo, my knight in shining armor, my protector, my love. End of chapter 107. Chapter 108, The Togabito Attack, Enter Kokuto. Third-person POV. The next morning, having not seen Kendra the night before, Ichigo decided to patch things up with the brunette. Walking to his parents' bedroom, he knocked. There was no answer. You decent? He asked. Come in, a rather emotionless, less upbeat voice told him. Ichigo opened the door and saw Kendra with her back to him. She was putting her top on, bra and pants already being worn. Listen, about yesterday, I wanted to talk to you, about us. What's there to talk about? Kendra said without a flicker of emotion, you and Orium are together. I have no right to come between you. I was foolish to think I could. It's as you said, you won't give up on your love life just because they'll age and you won't. She pulled her shirt over her head and turned around to look Ichigo in the eye, arms folded. I won't interfere with your relationship. We're friends, as you said. Hey, none of what happened yesterday exactly broke out of friend territory. I had fun, Ichigo smirked. Kendra looked at him in interest, dropping her emotionless expression. There's nothing that says you can't hang out with friends of the opposite gender one-on-one if you're already in a relationship. I had to do that with Tatsuki with the whole incident with Muramasa sometimes. So, Kendra was now looking away from Ichigo playing with her thumb and index fingers. It's okay if there's more like yesterday. Of course, Ichigo told her, though don't be surprised if Orium wants to join in. Of course not, Kendra finally smiled after being straight-faced the entire conversation. Ichigo smirked, good, glad you understand. Just because we're friends and we're of opposite genders doesn't mean we can't hang out like we were. There was a small pause before Ichigo rubbed the back of his head and looked to the side. Tatsuki was in your position when Orium and I first started dating, came out and said it to my face when we were fighting Talbumasuke's forces. Orium and I had a whole discussion about it during the summer, so now she just wants us to be happy together. Ichigo stopped rubbing his neck and craned his neck back and to the left. She's a tough girl, so I know she'll be fine. We cool. Kendra dropped her arms, walked over to Ichigo's and held out her hand for him to shake it. We're cool. They shook hands and there was an awkward moment of silence before Kendra said, so, we can hang out so long as I don't cross a line. Yeah, pretty much. Kendra pecked him on the cheek and headed to exit the room. Good to know. Ichigo blushed and shouted at her, blushing heavily. Okay, now that was crossing a line. Don't care. Getting breakfast. Kendra said in such a way that she knew what she did would elicit that reaction from Ichigo. He just shook his head and rolled his eyes. The kind of company I keep. He thought to himself. Once at school, Lelouch waited outside to wait for Susanna to show up with Orium and Rangiku. Tatsuki had come early, getting through half her morning jog and finding the wind chill factor a little breezy, so she used the school showers and used the spare uniform she kept in her locker to change and had breakfast at a restaurant down the block. Lisa was also rather early and without the other Vizards. She had come to the school using Shunpo. Ichigo and Kendra had just walked in the door, Tatsuki with them, noticing that Lisa was sneaking a note into someone's desk. Upon further inspection, Ichigo deduced that the desk belonged to Chizuru. It was obvious from the rather creepy stalkerish pictures of Orium and a picture of him with an arrow aimed at it. Ichigo had thought about putting a stop to the redhead's obvious crazy obsession with his girlfriend, but he hadn't thought of a good way of how to get her to quit it. He'd asked Tatsuki to do it in a way that was Tatsuki's definition of nice, but all that had accomplished was Chizuru declaring that Orium would eventually realize her true nature and come to her, and nothing Tatsuki said could dissuade Chizuru other than Chizuru calling Tatsuki a dragon and Ichigo a black knight and declaring war on both of them. Chizuru hadn't done anything in the way of launching an attack on Orium ever since then, but perhaps she was just as afraid of evoking Ichigo's wrath more so than he was unsettled with trying to break it to her that she should just flat out stop. Nevertheless, seeing Lisa doing something, Ichigo could only think she was up to something. What are you doing? He asked her. Exploring my sexuality, Lisa responded bluntly as she took her seat. With a student? Aren't you like 100 years old or something? Upon hearing this, Kendra headed for the bathroom. I've got it, Tatsuki chased after her, knowing that Ichigo didn't mean that to insult Kendra's affection towards him or to make her feel self-conscious about it. Ichigo gave her an approving signal as the raven-haired teen ran off. As he stood outside the classroom, Kigo dashed towards him. Thuriiki Iagoo. The energetic student dashed forward and slung his arm around Ichigo's shoulders. Ichigo was still waiting patiently for Tatsuki to return, so rather than practice some martial arts on his friend, he let Kigo act out. What? He simply responded in slight annoyance. So, Ichigo, about those girls that showed up, Kigo said, I know Rangiku and Kendra are out of my league and Rukia seems to want nothing to do with me, and that silver-haired chick seems to only have eyes for Lelouch, so what about that Vera chick? Do you know if she's seeing anyone? Kigo, how horny are you? Ichigo asked. Hey. Kigo barked back. No, yeah, I understand. Both heard Mizuru on the phone as he passed by. Yeah, of course. There was a pause. What? No, it's fine, I don't have anywhere to be after school exactly. Another pause. I can wait if you're late. It's not like you have a curfew, right? I mean, I've never exactly had this experience with someone your age before, so. He listened into the person on the other line. Ichigo and Kigo leaned in with growing curiosity. Oh, I didn't know you were visiting from out of town, though you are a transfer, so, huh? Yeah, no, it's fine. I'll see you at 6 unless plans change. Mizuru hung up the phone and began to put it in his pocket. Who was that one of your call girls? Ichigo joked. Actually, Mizuru confessed with a completely straight face, that was Vera. In Ichigo and Kigo's fragile little minds, the train representing their thoughts just derailed. What? Both shouted at the top of their lungs in complete and utter shock. Kigo dropped to his knees crying crocodile tears and holding his hands up by his chin, fingers twitching. When did you make a move on her and get her number? That's not fair, Mizuru. What happened to brothers before hoes? Well. Mizuru began to explain. Yesterday. 5:30 p.m. Mizuru was passing the children's park. As he did, he saw Vera sitting on the swing set kicking her legs and looking down at her feet. She seemed rather lonely. And it was Vera herself, not her Jikengan. Currently Rukia had shift, either way Mizuru had no way of knowing that. Vera seemed incredibly lonely. True, Vera did tend to draw herself out of social situations, but usually solitude brought her tranquil bliss, but she seemed a bit miserable. Mizuru, like a good-natured citizen, walked over to her and sat down on the swing next to her. Mind if I sit here? He asked, kicking his legs a little like Vera was doing and holding onto the bars. Vera said nothing and turned her head to hide her obvious blush. You don't say much, do you? Mizuru said to her. All throughout the day Vera hadn't said a word, and to think she hung out with someone as good-natured, upbeat, and social as Rukia. I'm Kojima, Mizuru, in case you forgot. We're in class together. Vera continued to remain silent, but lowered her hands on the handles. You okay? Trouble at home or something? Vera nodded and then shook her head. Mizuru was confused at first, but then remembered he had asked 2 questions. So, why are you all the way out here by yourself then? Mizuru asked. Vera dropped her hands in her lap, looked at the ground and shook her head. Oh, you don't feel like talking? That's all right, I guess. The situation was becoming increasingly weird for Mizuru. Hey, are you hungry? He asked. I don't know if you've had a lot of time to see around town, but... He scratched his head. I don't know, it's just weird seeing someone all by their lonesome self and not be happy, which you seem like you usually are given what little I know about you. Vera gripped her skirt and turned her head. The blush was back full swing. She nodded energetically. Oh, you want to go somewhere? She nodded again. Follow me then, I know a great place. Mizuru took Vera to one of his favorite restaurants. Vera realized she didn't have any money, but Mizuru told her even before they got to the restaurant that this was on him. He said it was because she seemed like she could use a really good meal. Was it any wonder Mizuru consistently got laid with how smooth he was with the ladies? It took some doing given how Vera refused to talk when the waitress came by to take their order, especially when she used the menu to cover her face when the waitress said they looked like a cute couple. Mizuru quickly responded with, Nah, I'm just treating my friend to a good meal. I've got extra cash on me and she seemed lonely and she lives on the far end of town, so. Well, aren't you a sweet one? The waitress was more the age of the women Mizuru normally sought after. Mizuru had udon noodles with shrimp and some pan-seared crab patties. Vera had spicy deep-fried tofu. Mizuru tried all meal to get her to talk, but Vera either used signs or didn't respond at all. You know, I wish you'd say something. I bet you have a really cute voice. Vera felt self-conscious. Her voice was extremely in direct contrast with her rather goth appearance. Her voice was very innocent, more so than Orium or even Momo. Vera didn't hate her voice and it wasn't the main reason she chose not to talk, though it was part of it, but her heart felt like it tried to jump up her ribcage when Mizuru said that. She didn't say anything even after they finished eating. It was dark out when they left the restaurant, the street lights were on and the moon was high in the sky. Present day. And? Come on, Kigo said, give us more. Well, the weird part is, I don't exactly understand what happened after that. I think I passed out or something happened. It was really weird. Ichigo had a guess, hollow. Well, do you remember what happened after at least? Kigo asked. Now that I remember, and that's why I wish I could remember what happened before it, because it would explain a lot. Yesterday. 7 p.m. As Ichigo would later predict correctly, Vera and Mizuru were attacked by a hollow. Vera sensed it long before her pager picked up on it. Rukia was on patrol, but she was on the other side of town and this was close. Instantly she stopped walking and, having been in front, she put her arm up to block for Mizuru. Vera. She looked around, trying to pick up the hollow. Stay here, she actually spoke up, surprising Mizuru. Vera ducked around an alleyway and swallowed her Jikengan to transform out of her Jigai. She rushed out into the open towards where she sensed the hollow, only, to her horror, for it to be diving right on top of Mizuru. Angered, she leapt in front of it. No! She shouted. Mizuru continued to look at his watch, wondering where Vera had run off to or how long she was going to keep him. Vera looked behind her to see if he was going to be okay, but the hollow used that opportunity to sucker punch her and knock her to the ground before going after Mizuru wondered what had hit him when he fell to the ground. Angered, Vera took into action and she slashed the hollow's entire head clean off from the side of the neck. Unfortunately, there was more than one hollow converging on her location. She was now surrounded by a trio of hollows. Damn it! Vera cursed to herself. As she stood there, though, the image of a man lying on the floor, bleeding, rushed through her mind with Vera on her knees crying. Other similar images appeared with Vera gleefully cutting up other men and laughing like a maniac after doing so. And then, the image of one man in particular crossed her mind. His face was distorted in her memory, but as he reached out to Vera and touched her knee, she shrieked in sorrow and glass shattered. By this point Vera had been spacing out and she took a wild slash and she accidentally slashed Mizuru, who had absent-mindedly walked in front of her. He fell to the ground bleeding and going into shock. Vera saw the three hollows approaching and saw the blood on her blade as she heard Chikami Sorai echo in her ear. Kill them all. The hollows drew near, but Vera's Ryotsu surged and impeded their path. Stay away from him, Vera glared, speaking with a serious tone, and then in the blink of an eye cut down all three hollows. She then began healing Mizuru with her Kido, trying to help him. What happened to him was an accident. This always happened, her past would come back to haunt her and she'd flail out and someone would get hurt. Don't die on me, she pleaded, even though Mizuru couldn't hear her. You can't die on me. In soul form she only had the use of one of her hands, so healing would take a bit longer. She did manage to heal the wound she had managed to inflict on Mizuru. Her Jigai came over and she got back into it and continued to hold Mizuru until he came to, pleading for him to wake up. She used her memory fracture tool to replace his memory, not knowing that it would simply cause slight amnesia and not a replication of his memory. Kojima-san, please wake up, Vera pleaded. She was speaking even though other people could hear her. She liked Mizuru, she thought he was cute and he had been nice to her, and she had hurt him without meaning to, all because of her stupid past. Mizuru woke up to see Vera holding him and crying for him. Vera. She held his head to her shoulder. Kojima-san. Mizuru was surprised to hear her speak. Why you're... Vera simply smiled. I was right, your voice is cute and you have a nice smile too, he told her. Vera blushed. Come on, talk again, he said with a smile. What do you want me to say? She asked. Anything, just let me hear your voice, he told her. Okay, Vera's heart was pounding. Can you tell me what happened? I think I blacked out after you ran down that alleyway. Mizuru asked. I don't know. I just went around the corner to make a phone call and... Oh, you have a phone? Mizuru asked. Oh yeah, Vera held up her soul pager, which functioned like a normal cell phone. This is it. Ms. Worrow tried to hold it, but Vera pulled it away. You can look, but you can't touch. It's very expensive. Ms. Worrow smiled. Sure, no problem. He stood up and reached down to help Vera to her feet. So, do you at least mind if I get your number? He asked. Sure, that's okay. Vera was blushing even more. She and Ms. Worrow exchanged phone numbers. After the exchange, Ms. Worrow said, So do you want me to walk you home? I'm actually renting space at the Urahara Shoten, she said. You wouldn't want to walk me all the way over there, you live all the way across town. Wow, you don't say anything, but you sure do listen a lot, Ms. Worrow said. Vera began quoting a proverb she'd heard. The Grey Warhound is intelligent enough to speak and wise enough not to. Oh, you like proverbs? Ms. Worrow asked. A little. Where I grew up, proverbs were normal as per teaching methods, she half lied. You know, you and I should hang out more. I mean, if you're not busy, Ms. Worrow said. Are you sure? I mean, I don't think I'm worth the time. I mean our friends, Vera didn't know what she wanted to say. Hey, relax, I always have time for friends, Ms. Worrow said. Right, Vera smiled over energetically. Friends, we're just friends, she said punctually. Ms. Worrow, reading the signs he had observed so many times, leaned in closer to Vera to try to kiss her, only for Vera to back away. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you. And no, Vera defended, panicking slightly. That was just so sudden. I got all nervous and... Do you object? Ms. Worrow got close again. Only if we're doing it wrong, Vera responded with a hint of lust in her voice. Neither she nor Ms. Worrow were inexperienced in things like this by any stretch of the imagination, but as they locked lips, tongues sloppily feeling for each other like two Siamese fighting fish, both enjoyed the feeling, Vera more so. She wasn't exactly Ms. Worrow's type, but hey, a girl was a girl and Vera was a pretty nice one at that. After Vera broke away, she smiled at Ms. Worrow. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Okay, call me if you want, my phone's on, Ms. Worrow told her. Okay, she said. There was an awkward silence. Well, goodbye, Vera ran off into the night. Goodbye, Ms. Worrow smiled as she watched her go. Present day. And that's it, you just watched her go? Holy hell man, hell must have frozen over. Usually you have your target undressed and in the palm of your hand by the end of the night, Kigo exclaimed. Yeah, older women that are either widows or just incredibly lonely. Vera's our age, I couldn't use her like that, Ms. Worrow stated. Ichigo did his best not to laugh at the irony of Ms. Worrow's statement. Kigo was about to reply to Ms. Worrow's statement when Rukia came running down the hall and grabbed Ms. Worrow by the collar before dragging him away. I'm borrowing you, she said quickly. Kigo and Ichigo decided it was best not to comment on the situation. It was 15 minutes to the bell, so iPhone hadn't arrived, but Susanna, Rangiku and Orium finally did, as had Urayu and Chad. Vera was in the bathroom working with a makeup kit for reasons that only she knew, but as the day looked like it couldn't get off to a much weirder start than it already had, there was an earthquake. The magnitude wasn't large and it didn't go outside a few square miles of the school, but the entire building shook. Inside the classroom, Ichigo and Lelouch both nodded to each other, the latter sitting on his ass with Susanna having fallen on him and the former having fallen backwards out of his chair and hit his head, agreeing that that was not a natural quake. One by one the Soul Reapers swallowed their Jikangan and rushed out onto the school grounds. Kigo was the only one who could see the black uniformed students. Lisa, sensing danger, grabbed Ichigo's pass from his bag and whispered to Kon. Carry my Jigai somewhere safe. The school doesn't need to be in a panic. Kon understood. Outside, Lisa formed up with Ichigo, Lelouch, Susanna, Rangiku, Orium, Chad, Rukia, who had left Ms. Worrow in the interest of seeing what was going on, Vera, Kendra, and Tatsuki. What's going on out there? Kigo looked from the window. As if to answer his question, several hell gates opened. Looks I had reason to be suspect, Lelouch stated as the force from the gate opening forced everyone into a defensive position. From the gate 6 Togabito appeared. One was gargantuan, one was fat, one was incredibly slim, and the last three were of average size and height. They had very undistinguishable features as they all looked the same in their black cloaks and white masks. So, no identification, we're attacking blindly? Lelich asked. Yes, Rukia responded. That would have been something good to mention in the report, but no matter, Lelich said and released his Shikai without calling it out. Vera, go apply for Gentei Kaijo for us. Orium, defend her. Ichigo. Before Lelich could finish, one of the Togabito attacked the group with a long tentacle, splitting them. Well, so much for a plan, Ichigo stated. Let's just take these guys on end. From far away Ichigo sensed a hell gate open. His perception had increased heavily over the months, and especially where his sisters were concerned. Without word, Ichigo rocketed towards his house. He came face to face with the Togabito right in front of his house. Kurosaki Ichigo, you've arrived far sooner than I expected, the Togabito told him. How do you know my name? Ichigo asked him. The Togabito simply laughed and imbued his hands with fire. Back at the school grounds, the group had split up. Chad was fighting the gargantuan Togabito, Tatsuki was up against the fat one. Uriah was fighting the slim one. Lisa was fighting the guy with tentacles, Rangiku, and Susanna were fighting one of the other average fighters, and Rukia, Kendra and Lelich were fighting the last one. Who are you people? Lelich demanded to know. We're Togabito, of course, the Togabito responded. Don't play games, identify yourselves, Lelich said, spamming fireballs. The Togabito deftly dodged the incoming shots. Not bad, but then again you were always a fierce opponent, weren't you, Captain of Squad 10, Lamperouge Lelich? Lelich scowled. Again, who are you? Perhaps this will remind you, the Togabito chuckled. Right, Kuaderno. Bankai. Lelich declared. Zero no Seishin no Iin Tamashi. Meanwhile, Tatsuki was fighting the rather tubby Togabito with her final form. She was practically using the guy as a basketball. It came with being strong. However, while her hands and feet were connecting, she felt like she wasn't making any progress. To test her theory, she unleashed a stream of fire at her opponent. He absorbed it. As I thought, she said, you can absorb energy, only physical attacks will work on you, won't they? Maybe, the Togabito laughed. Lisa donned her mask and tore after her opponent. Her sword made calamari out of his arms. What? What is that mask? I see you freaks aren't used to hollowification, Lisa stated. She charged energy in her arms as she clamped them over her sword handle. Zero, Lisa blasted the Togabito with the massive quantity of energy. His mask shattered from the force, revealing Gunjo. Gunjo! Susanna and Rangiku's opponent shouted, put your mask on quickly. Gun. Forcefully a new hell gate opened and a sword came screaming out of the hell gate and skewered Gunjo on it. Then it dragged a screaming Gunjo back into hell. What the? Rukia gaped. It's just like with hollows, Lelich realized, shatter their masks and they'll be taken back by the hell's wool. Lamperouge-kun. Orium flagged from down below. It's been approved. Perfect. Lelich declared. All right, here we go everyone. Our counter-attack begins here. Gentei Kaijo. Lelich declared. Shikumo. He declared. Fool. You can't beat me like that. Segunda etapa. Kira shouted and dove through the death cloud. I don't have to harm you, to harm your mask, Lelich smirked. Kira came diving through the death cloud, his cloak and mask stripped. WH what? Aizen may not know it, but telling me that accessories and Kido get absorbed first really helps with this ability, Lelich smirked. I don't have to inflict any damage on you to disintegrate your mask and cloak. A new hell gate forcefully opened and Kira was taken by the hell's will. Uriah opened fire on his opponent and with Licht Regen managed to shatter his opponent, Mirakumo's, mask. Keep it up, Lelich encouraged. Gentei Kaijo. Kendra declared and tore after Chad's opponent as he was downed by the stalwart student's right arm blast. Kill from the shadows, Akuma Ansatsu. Increasing her speed, Kendra used a new ability of her Shikai that her Zanpakuto had taught her after they formed back together. Bakudo 37, Tsurubashi. She formed the Kido over the Togabito. Lelouch wondered what she was up to, but suddenly Kendra dove into the ground, disappearing into the ground, and then reappeared through the Kido from a shadowy portal, her momentum continually increasing, and she used the doubly increased momentum to bring her foot down onto the Togabito beneath her, and that was all that was written for Garagai. This can't be, Sail gaped. He and Taken were currently the only ones left. Taken, we must retreat, he declared. They know how to beat us. No sooner had Sail said that did Taken get punched across the face by Tatsuki and his mask shatter. Damn it. Sail opened his own Hellgate. This isn't over. He retreated into it and looked at Lelouch. I'll teach you to explode my head, you rotten bastard. That was Sail? Lelouch seemed to have no idea. Lelouch, orders. Rangiku asked. You two are coming with me. We're going to help Ichigo. Upon arrival though, Ichigo was found having a rough time with his opponent, Shuren. Ichigo had already hollow-fied and Shuren was still at an advantage. Kurosaka-san, we've come to help, Susanna told him. Help? I see, so those fools were of no consequence to you all, Shuren stated. A pity. From beneath his robes Shuren pulled out a book. The word Volcarona was written on the front cover in what appeared to be a cross between Aztec and Japanese characters. The pages flapped open by themselves and Shuren recited. Fire burn and fire roar, total destruction from mountain to shore. He shouted. In a torrent of fire the entire area at and around Ichigo's house was set aflame, including Lelouch and the others. However, while Susanna, Rangiku and Lelouch suffered severe burns, Ichigo cut his way through the flames. More appropriately, it was that Tensou Zanjutsu was using his very being to protect Ichigo from the licking flames by coating Ichigo in a protective cloak of his very soul. Of course, Ichigo had no idea of that. Karen. Yuzu. Ichigo dove towards his burning house. Karen and Yuzu hadn't left the house yet. The bus wouldn't come for another half hour. Inside his house, burning to cinders, he found Shuren holding both Karen and Yuzu under his arms. Let them go now. Ichigo shouted and dashed towards Shuren, who proceeded to use Karen's body as a meat shield, halting Ichigo, and then tore through the burning roof. Ichigo pursued and dropped his blade. He would tear off Shuren's arms and grab his sisters with his bare hands if that's what it took. With his fist he punched Shuren hard in the back. Shuren managed to gain aerial control, but damn it, he had really felt that. You will leave my sisters alone. Ichigo raged. He dove towards Shuren, this time aiming for his head to rip it off with his fist, but his mask shattered and Ichigo crashed to the ground. I wish I had more time to play with you, Kurosaki Ichigo, but I'm afraid I must take my leave, Shuren stated. However, as he reached towards the Hellgate, a new sinner, one not wearing a mask or a cloak, but rather a bunch of black bandages, barred his path. It was Kokuto. He struck forward and took a swing at Shuren's neck. Shuren ducked under it and proceeded to bypass Kokuto, but Kokuto used one of the chains on his body to grapple Kokuto's left arm and pull Karen free just as Shuren entered the Hellgate. Yuzu. Ichigo watched Shuren take Yuzu into hell with him. He became enraged. He shouted in anger and in rage as his sclera turned black and his irises yellow without Ichigo even hollow-fying. His skin started to turn white. He was transforming. In the middle of Karakura town he was transforming. Ichigo. Orium came bounding up the street from behind him. Orium, hearing her voice, Ichigo's transformation halted. Don't do it, Ichigo. Don't transform. Stay you, please. Orium, Ichigo was able to stop his transformation, but in doing so he lost every last bit of energy, Yuzu. He blacked out. When he came to, he was in his family's clinic. Orium had restored the house and Lelouch and Rangiku while Ichigo was out cold and was currently working on Susanna whilst everyone stood around, except for Kokuto, who was tied up by Kendra for questioning. Kokuto insisted on his innocence, but Ichigo was the only one who had seen him after Shuren set the whole place up in flames. Orium had only come in to see Kokuto holding Karen and Ichigo on the ground. She had no idea Shuren had been around. Good, you're awake, Lelouch stated. Lelich, Ichigo slowly got up. My head feels like it's on fire. Your whole body should be on fire given the burns Lamperouge Teiko and the others suffered. It's amazing you came out of that inferno without so much as a single singe mark, Kendra stated. Lelich helped Ichigo to his feet. Orium can restore your Ryutsu later. Right now we need you to confirm Kokuto's story before we persecute him for no reason. Kokuto. Ichigo was confused. Me, Kokuto said, sitting on the floor, bound by Kendra's Kido. He's not a threat to us, least I don't think. He saved Karen so. Realization hit Ichigo. Karen. Where is she? He coughed hard. Relax, Lelich pat his back. Your sister is upstairs fast asleep in her bed. What about Yuzo, where's my other sister? Shuren, that Togabito you were fighting, Kokuto told him, took her with him into hell. Ichigo's face tensed up into full-blown angst. He grit his teeth, shut his eyes and then shouted. Nuwa. He dropped to his knees and pounded the floor. Damn it. I promised my dad nothing would happen. I'm supposed to protect my sisters. Damn it. Oh, grow a spine. Rukia stomped on Ichigo's back. What the hell was that for? Ichigo jumped to his feet glaring at Rukia. Fool. If you lost your sister we'll just dive into hell and get her back, we've already been approved to take a team into hell. Lelich sent word out the moment he recovered. Our team can't be bigger than 6 though, Rukia said. Unfortunately you've been asked specifically not to go, Kendra stated. Like hell. Ichigo shouted. It's my sister that was kidnapped. I have every right to go. Your holification could bring about complications if you went into hell and used it. Your condition is deteriorating and you nearly transformed without the use of your mask. The head captain doesn't want to risk an incident, Lelich told him. I don't care. This is my sister we're talking about, Lelich. My sister. He lifted Lelich up off the ground by the lapels of his uniform. If you think I'm going to stand here and twiddle my thumbs and not go and help her, when it's my born duty as an older brother to protect her, you're brain dead. Fine, Lelich said with a deadpan expression. What? Lelich, that's completely against orders, Kendra antagonized as Ichigo put him down. You can't do this. I'm in charge of this mission, Lelich told her, I will accept full responsibility if something happens. You can slap me on the wrist or whatever when we get back to Soul Society. For now though we might need Ichigo's strength. Besides, Lelich smiled at Ichigo, I'd do anything for my sister too. If our roles were reversed, I know I'd be demanding to go as well. Thank you, Lelich, Ichigo was incredibly grateful. If Ichigo's going then I'm going too, Tatsuki vocalized. I've always been his backup. Chad nodded firmly indicating he wanted to go too. I suppose I'll go if only to confirm whether or not you're violating orders not to bring Ichigo into hell interferes with the mission, Kendra said. And I'm leader so that means I'm going as well, Lelich affirmed. At this Susanna stirred and Orium released Soten Kishun from her. She's all better, Orium sidestepped away from the bed. Susanna sat up, clutching her head, How are you feeling? Lelich asked her. Susanna smiled at Lelich, I'm all right. Her smile resonated into Kokuto's mind. The image of small girl with short silver hair, no larger than Yachiro came to the forefront of his memory. Nii-san. Susanna stood up and dusted herself off. Anyone wanna fill me in? Susanna asked. Allow me Shape-ni-san, Uriu pushed up his glasses. Kokuto's eyes widened at the mention of his own surname. Another memory played in his mind. Kokuto had forgotten the image of the enemy he fought so long ago. All he remembered was the long triple-barreled submachine gun that fired dragon's teeth and had it aimed right at Kokuto armed only with the midnight black sword he still carried. Never bring a sword to a gunfight, Kokuto. Nii-san. The silver-haired girl from Kokuto's last memory darted in front of him and shielded him with her body. She was older now and she looked very similar to Susanna. Kokuto looked at her in amazement. Susanna looked at Kokuto with interest. She didn't recognize him at first because of the bandages, but his eyes, she recognized his eyes. Kokuto? Nii-san, is that you? Nii-san. Everyone in the room was surprised. Untie him this instant. Susanna pleaded. Kendra did so without question. Kokyuto was released and he and his sister embraced in a warm hug. Nii-san, Susanna sobbed into his brother's shoulder. Wait, you're Susanna's older brother, Kokyuto finished Susanna's sentence. She gave her life to save me from an attack. I cut down the man who attacked her violently. And you were sent to hell for that. Susanna looked up at Kokyuto, having felt the chains on his body when she embraced him. That's not right. That's not fair either. Yeah, that doesn't sound right. If Kokyuto was sent to hell for avenging his sister, flashes of Lelich's memory, including his first order of geese, his geasing of Yuffie, and several actions during Zero Requiem, appeared in his mind. Why am I not in hell with him? What makes me so different? Or is there more to it than that? Lelich Dono, Nii-san's here to help, right? Nii-san wouldn't do anything bad, he's a good person. Let's go into hell and help him. Susanna looked at Lelich with hopeful eyes. Dono? What did this man do to deserve that level of respect from Susanna? Kokyuto wondered. You've got it backwards, Lelich said. Kokyuto's the one helping us. Huh? Susanna was confused. Lelich gave her the short version. I see, then, I'm coming. Kokyuto might be helping us, but that doesn't count as one of our group. If I go, that makes 6, plus Nii-san who's a free agent. Susanna, you should stay here, hell is dangerous, Kokyuto warned. Susanna shook her head and pointed to her armband. See this, Nii-san? This is a lieutenant's armband. It means. I know what it means, sis, Kokyuto said, having knowledge of Soul Reapers like many other sinners. I'd still rather you didn't come. But I have to come. Lelich Dono is going and I'd do anything I could to help him. I love him, she said it right out in the open. Love? Kokyuto did his best not to scowl. You heard the lady, besides, your sister's a competent fighter. I helped train her myself, Lelich grinned. Is that so? Kokyuto smiled, doing his best to keep the corner of it from twitching. Lelich nodded. All right, we've got our group. The rest of you stay here and we'll be back before midnight. Ichigo then realized something. Hey wait, what about school? With the earthquake and the property damage, classes were cancelled. Inu-san managed to recover your house before the paparazzi got a fixation on it, Uriah told him. Oh, well that's good then, Ichigo said. Are we all ready to go then? Kokyuto asked. Lelich and the others nodded in affirmation. All right, Kokyuto said and urged everyone to follow him outside. I'll open the gate. Once inside, you guys will follow me. I'll lead you straight to Shuren's lair. Understood, Lelich said. He was a little iffy about following someone who, for something that seemed so minuscule in comparison to Lelich's crimes, but he wouldn't let it show for Susanna's sake. He'd keep his guard up nonetheless. He thought about using geese to make Kokyuto spill it, but he figured it might be best if he held onto it. If Kokyuto was up to something, he would need his geese to tame him. As Ichigo headed out the door, Orium ran up to him and grabbed his arm from behind, burying his head into his back. Please be careful, she told him. Ichigo turned around and looked at his girlfriend. I'll return safely if that's what you want, he said, knowing how reckless he tended to get. That's good enough for me, Orium smiled back. Briefly the two kissed and hugged each other tightly before Ichigo headed out the door. Orium smiled like a maiden as she watched him go. Outside in front of the clinic, Kokyuto opened the gate and it began pulling in the air around it like a vacuum cleaner. Kokyuto stood on the inside of the gate and gestured everyone inside. Ladies first, Lelich gestured with a smirk on his face. Kendra, Tatsuki, and Susanna leapt in, followed by Chad, then Ichigo and Lelich brought up the rear, barring Kokyuto, who closed the gate, and the seven began their descent into the depths of hell. In her abode, sitting on a high level of her tower, Rita, with her apparatus in front of her, sitting her recliner with a headphone and HUD system up on her eye level, watched their entrance. Here they come, she said and smiled, this will prove rather interesting. Entertain me, Kokyuto. She looked at Ichigo, substitute Soul Reaper Kurosaki Ichigo, and then at Lelich, and Captain of Squad 10 Lamp Rouge Lelich. It's been a while since something interesting happened around here. Rita tapped a finger into the armrest of her chair, clicking a panel and taking command of a pack of Kushonada. Let's have some fun, boys and girls. After all, you're in my world now. To be continued. Chapter 109, Kokyuto's Betrayal, Total Party Kill. Third Person POV. Hell. Circle 7, Shuren's Lair. Circle 7 was known for being very cold and littered with underground caves. Although Shuren mainly pranced about Circle 5, 7 was where he made his cozy home. He sat upon a self-made throne in front of a lava fountain that was used to heat the cave. Yuzu sat unconscious in a bird cage that hung from the ceiling. Sale checked in with Shuren to give him the news. So it's just you and me then? Shuren asked. Yes, Sale stated, though I'm loath to admit it. We had a good group. Sale was a social creature of a certain nature. He had enjoyed working with so many others. He thought he might be able to eventually build an army and grow powerful enough to absorb Shuren, and maybe, with the strength in numbers, they'd have a chance at rebellion or negotiating better living conditions in hell. It matters not, Shuren said, reading pages in his spell book. All we need is Kurosaki Ichigo to make his way to us, and soon we will have our means of escaping this place, all of us. There was a pause. They should be entering hell soon. Greet them in Circle 3, would you, and confront them with the pinnacle of your power. Yes sir, Sale said. He tore off his cloak and mask and then unsheathed his sword. Sip, Fornikaras. Sale swallowed his sword and transformed. He then held his arms around his body and prepared to transform again, whereupon he would proceed to take off for Circle 3. Segunda, Etapa. Circle 1. Ichigo, Lelouch, and the others descended from the sky to down below into hell. The fall was pretty intense, but control of their descent would be of benefit to them, and if they really needed to, there was always Tsuirubashi. The group of 7 landed on a small white platform and looked around. Large white blocks rose up beneath them, and all around them some were floating. Welcome to Circle 1, Kokyuto told Ichigo, Lelouch, and their companions. City of the Damned. City? This place is a city. Tatsuki looked around. Looks more like a color-devoid version of Tetris, Lelouch joked. It's a lot different than what I imagined. What do you mean? Kokyuto asked him. I always pictured hell as this fire and brimstone place with devils everywhere and cries of the condemned making ear-splitting echoes through the air, Lelouch said. Kokyuto laughed. That's Circle 9, the Dungeon of Eternal Suffering. We're not going anywhere near there, and you'd have to be a pretty messed up bastard to wind up there. In fact, the only Togabito in the 9th circle are Togabito that proved themselves to be so messed up and psychotic that they aren't allowed to interact with other Togabito here on the surface, or they have committed acts so heinous and despicable while they were here or during their lives that they will remain there forever. The Togabito you saw dragged away when you broke their masks were taken there. Hardly anyone goes into Circle 9 voluntarily unless it's to add to the suffering of a Togabito who's been put there. Sounds like a jail for sinners, Susanna stated. Seems kind of redundant if you ask me, Kendra responded to her statement. This is getting us nowhere, Ichigo simmered. Which way do we go? Where else? Kokyuto asked. The only direction is down. He leapt off the block. Ichigo and the others were onto the city streets. Ichigo, Lelouch, and everyone else followed suit. The 7 broke off into a sprint, following Kokyuto as he led them in different directions. Why aren't we just running straight? Kendra asked. There are different drop-off points into the 2nd circle, Kokyuto stated. Hell is connected by a system of metaphorical ladders, though they're really more like gaps in the abyss that connect the different circles. I've been here long enough that I have a map in my head. Not to mention that Shuren and I used to be best friends. You know that, jackass? Ichigo asked. Yeah, but that's all in the past, Kokyuto said. Come on. I don't like the sound of that, I don't like it one bit. Lelouch thought to himself. So what do you gain out of helping us exactly? Kendra asked. What do you mean? Kokyuto responded. I always thought sinners were selfish bastards only doing things for self-profit, that they were condemned for eternity, never allowed to resurrect into the cycle of life, she stated. Where did you learn that? Lelouch asked. There's information that certain squads are privy to that not all other squads have at their fingertips, Kendra told the captain. You are half right, most sinners don't do that, Kokuto answered, and we aren't allowed to resurrect into the cycle of life. If we die we reform elsewhere, usually in a random location. Our world is truly deserving of its title. However, some of us seek redemption. We do good deeds so that the warden will smile upon us and lower our sentence. After a certain amount of time we are allowed to leave. Geez, it's like life without parole, plus murder several times over. Glad I'm not headed here after death, Tatsuki commented. What does Shuren want with Yuzo? Ichigo asked. No idea, Kokuto stated, despite knowing exactly what Shuren, and he, desired of Yuzo. Ichigo didn't like that answer, not one bit. As the group continued to run, Ichigo, Tatsuki, and the others took note of the Togabito lining the walls. Who are they? Tatsuki asked. Other Togabito, Kokuto stated, the harmless ones anyway. What do you mean the harmless ones? Ichigo asked. When an individual is sent to hell and becomes a Togabito they are allowed to keep all of their powers, Kokuto stated. Are you serious? Lelouch asked. Yeah, and it makes them feel powerful. They think that they can rebel and escape, but the guardians of hell that roam the land, the warden's employees as we sometimes call them, are much more powerful than any Togabito in hell. They exist simply to instill despair on those with any hopes of escaping or reincarnation until they lose their will to fight back and simply count the days hungry, miserable, and slowly going insane, Kokuto answered. Well, most of the Togabito here are that weak. The top 10 is a different story, that's why the Kusanada hunt in packs. The top 10? Lelouch asked. Kokuto explained about the caste and numbering system. He didn't explain how strong ranking was though. The top 10 are all strong enough to handle at least one Kusanada on their own, with the top 3 having little to no problems in doing so. However, in a group, they become a problem, Kokuto continued his explanation. So who's the biggest fish down here? Ichigo asked. Is there a chance we might run into him? Kokuto looked up. I doubt it. Cause if we did we should start saying our prayers and give up all hope, Kokuto stated. Why's that? Susanna asked. Kokuto began to explain, no one knows the identity of the number 1 sinner in hell. We have no idea if it's a man or a woman either. All who fight the current number 1 are killed and their life force is absorbed. They become a part of the number 1 and it makes the number 1 stronger. He or she is in a class all on his or her own. To face him or her in battle means certain destruction. It's rumored that only the warden herself has the power to match the current number 1. Kokuto stated. Geez, something like that lives down here. Lelouch asked. Undoubtedly, Kokuto answered. What about any of the other top 10, are they a threat? Kendra asked. They're all threats, but if you are asking the likeliness we'd run into them, I'm going to try and keep us away from their territory, Kokuto stated. Say, Kokuto, is there a man named Aizen or Talbumasuk down here? Lelouch asked. You know numbers 2 and 3? Kokuto asked. Wait a minute, hold the phone, Tatsuki freaked out, 2 and 3. Aizen's number 2 and the number 1 is in a league all on their own. This better be a bad joke. Lelouch ranted. What reason would I have to joke? Kokuto stated. Damn, someone so powerful it makes Aizen look meek by comparison. With that kind of power, might the number 1, one day escape? If that were to happen, could we even win? What would we, the Soul Society, do against that kind of power? While Lelouch contemplated a worst-case scenario, a foghorn was heard from the other end of the city. It was loud and low-pitched. Great, here they come. They? Tatsuki asked. The Kusanada, the guardians I mentioned, Kokuto stated. What the hell would they want with us? We're not sinners, Lelouch jeered. Your guess is as good as mine, Kokuto stated. In her abode Rita was commanding the approaching Kusanada with her apparatus. Let's see now, can you survive my little test? Are you strong enough to survive my domain? Back in the circle, Kokuto gave a fair warning, careful, the Kusanada catch and kill, usually by eating their catch, anything they grasp. If they kill you, you will automatically become bound in chains. Being caught by a Kushada adds 5 years to one's sentence. You will automatically have a 5-year sentence in hell if one of those things gets you. Well, this place is tight, those legless freaks don't look like they can move so easily, Tatsuki said. As if to prove her wrong, an arm came through the wall. The Kusanada was practically phasing through it. Everyone had to leap to safety. Be careful, they can move through solid matter like phantoms. Just keep following me, Kokyuto stated. There aren't any Kusanada until you reach the much lower levels, and they're farther and fewer in between. Up here they just provide entertainment for the warden. Geez, it sounds like something Anohana Teiko would do on a bad day, Lelich joked with a horror-stricken expression. You are so lucky she's not here to hear that, Kendra told him. Kokyuto suddenly swore, ah, crap. What? What's wrong? Ichigo asked him. Kokyuto pointed to a trio of Kusanada. We need to get over there, but they're blocking the entrance. Well, it's like Lelich says then, Ichigo said, whipping out his Zanpakuto, when there's no path before you, you make one of your own. Bankai. Slipping into Tensa Zanjutsu, Ichigo tore into the air and looked at the Kusanada, who all looked in his direction. Getchuga. Without warning, Ichigo's mask appeared on his face, Tensho. The attack was powerful enough to destabilize the Kusanada and make a mess of things. In her abode, Rita was ecstatic, she eyed with rather odd interest. That's some power you have, Kurosaka-san, but those were amongst the weaker Kusanada. Still, that's impressive. Your holification is certainly something to be admired. She pressed a button. I guess I'll call off the attack. In Circle 1, Ichigo and the others watched the Kusanada leave. What, are they leaving? Yeah, that's right. Run. Run. Ichigo laughed like he was enjoying himself. Ichigo, chill, Lelich told him. Why do you think they retreated? Susanna asked her brother. I don't know, Kokyuto stated. Well, regardless, it's good news for us, Ichigo said and looked down off the pathway. We jump. We jump, Kokyuto said, and one by one Ichigo and his friends dropped down below. Circle 2, of course, was not what they expected. The area below them looked like a Roman Colosseum surrounded by water beneath them, but the water was guarded by a glossy barrier. Ichigo and the others dropped down onto the translucent barrier. What is this place? Susanna asked. Circle 2, Kokyuto explained, Arena of the Dead. Arena? Kendra asked. Oh, I see, Lelich deduced, it's like in ancient Rome where they have gladiators fight each other to the death. I expect this is how ranks are exchanged and are established. I don't know what this Rome is that you speak of, Kokyuto told him, but what you said is very true. We sinners come to do battle here to hone our skills. Of course, it is not the only means by which we can increase our rank. The warden is all-seeing and all-knowing, but it is where most Togabito come to check up on their ranks, as there are very few other places to do so. So what do we have to do, kill a bunch of Togabito in order to move forward? Ichigo asked. Yeah, pretty much, come on. I'll ask for a team battle so we can waste less time, Kokyuto said. Ichigo and the others hung back while Kokyuto walked into the center of the arena and urged them to follow in. We are a party of 7. Kokyuto declared. Who here is brave enough to challenge us? As if on cue, 7 Togabito all came rising up from out of a secret door in the floor. There were many Togabito who did nothing but fight in the Colosseum. These 7 belonged to that group. Ichigo clutched his sword and Kokyuto clutched his. The Togabito were not afraid of Ichigo's friends, so they figured that all they had to do was eliminate Kokyuto and the fight would be easy. At least until the status board came on. Kokyuto's rank, number 187, was in very stark contrast to the other group's lowest number, 285. Several of the fighters were even in the quadruple digits. Their faces all turned blue with shock and they began waving white flags. Wow, 187, pretty impressive, Lelich stated. Of course it's impressive, Nii-san is amazing, Susanna exclaimed. Oh sis, really you praise me too highly, Kokyuto rubbed the back of his head. In response to the other team's forfeit, a warp pad appeared. Is that to take us lower down? Lelich asked. Kokyuto nodded. Come on. The next thing Ichigo and the others knew, they were on the opposite side of the glossy barrier and falling at an alarming rate. They landed in an area that appeared in stark contrast to Circle 1. There were white fluffy clouds lining the walls and water rushed beneath the platform they were standing on. The water fell into an endless white abyss, but it was very light-hearted for hell. "Welcome to Circle 3, Kokuto told the group, the white void." "Oh, it's certainly white, sheesh, I think I'll go blind from all this bright color," Kendra quipped. "Oh, that wouldn't be too much fun. If you're handicapped it won't be nearly as entertaining when I slit your pretty little throat." The septet turned around to see a Togabito behind them. He had the trademark gray sarashi on his torso, but his legs were non-existent. Instead he had a long sweeping white tail with a bulbous flower on the end of it that was dripping with violet ink of some kind. Taking up the Togabito's whole pelvic area was a hollow hole. Along his back were mauve bony wings with red blades sticking out of the ends, each as long as a katana. There were 4 on each side. Underneath all of the wings except for the bottom pair were red sacks filled with who knew what. The Togabito had pink hair that ran down to his pectorals, purple face paint that ran down along his eyes in 3 straight, vertical lines, and he had yellow eyes. He also had horns atop his head that stretched up, out and curled back with a pigtail loop. The Togabito's hands were purple and he had nails as longer as Muramis's. "Captain of Squad 10, Lamperouge Lelich. To think that you'd actually come down here and be forced to confront me once again," the Togabito said as his tail rattled. Lelich," Kendra pegged him for an explanation. "Former 9th Espada of the Arrancar army, Kira's predecessor, Sail Aporo Grands," Lelich said with a scowl. "That's Sail?" Kendra asked. "His resurrection looks nothing like your report on him." "That's because this isn't a resurrection. It's a segunda etapa," Sail giggled. Everyone soon became on edge. "But how? You were dead before Talbumasuk developed the segunda etapa formula, the documents we have prove it." "That doesn't make any sense," Kendra ranted. "I taught myself," Sail stated. "According to Kira, Ulquiorra originally had segunda etapa without any help whatsoever, and after watching Kira do it a couple of times in the Colosseum I sort of taught myself as if it were as instinctual as Sonido." "Big deal, what number are you?" Kokuto asked. "Oh, I know you're 101 ranks above me, Kokuto, but don't consider me a pushover because of it," Sail said, tail twitching. "I don't have to consider," Kokuto said and appeared behind Sail with the Arrancar cut clean in half. "You are a pushover compared to me." Ichigo and everyone else's eyes widened at seeing this, except for Susanna, who simply cheered and whistled. Kokuto cast Sail's body into the void and then tried to determine where the group should jump from and urged them forward. The 4th circle was a magma-encrusted, volcanic wasteland, the warmest of Hell's environments. Circle 4, Kokuto input, Volcano of Despair. In her abode Rita was wondering how better to test Kokuto and the others. True, Yuzo could turn into a Togabito any second under Shuren's manipulation, but if time really did almost run out she would grab Yuzo herself. Her job came before entertainment after all. She hadn't been satisfied with the power of Ichigo or his companions quite yet, so she pulled up a list of other creatures she had power over, besides just the Kusanada. As Kokuto led Ichigo and the others on, a meteor struck the ground, only it wasn't a meteor, but a giant, lava-imbued, 3-headed dog, in other words, a Cerberus. "I think the warden means to challenge us," Kokuto stated. "Beg your pardon?" Lelich asked. "The warden is watching our move, and Cerberus is one of the many other creatures she employs besides just the Kusanada. He's not as invincible, but he's still plenty powerful," Kokuto stated. "How strong is he in terms of Togabito?" Lelich asked. "Cerberus would be at least beneath 150, Kokuto answered. "We'll be hard-pressed to take him down together." "We should. We don't have time to waste with this thing," Lelich said. "I'm up to bat." Susanna squealed, knowing what was coming. "I always get jitters when he does this," she jumped up and down. Rita, in her abode, watched Lelich curiously as she held a sack of pecans in her lap and munched on them like she was watching a movie. Lelich removed his contacts. "Cerberus. I, Captain of Squad 10, Lamperouge Lelich, command you. Let us pass." Lelich looked Cerberus dead in all 6 of his eyes and his geese took effect. Like a docile domestic dog, Cerberus stood aside and sat down with his tail thumping on the ground. If Lelich knew Rita's thoughts he'd be surprised. So, he has the power of the king, the geese, does he? How very intriguing. I've got my eye on you, Lamperouge Lelich. Ichigo and the others rushed towards Circle 5, the Plains of Misery. Yes, all of the circles sounded as charming as all of the others. Kokuto frowned when they arrived. What's wrong, Nii-san? Susanna asked. This is the right plane, but the wrong location. We're farther off from the target than I intended, Kokuto stated. When did you make the mistake? Lelich asked. Circle 3, that one's always hard to gauge, Kokuto stated. Who cares, let's just go. Ichigo rushed forward. However, as Ichigo rushed forward onto the plane, Kokuto realized, as did Lelich, that they had company. Ichigo, look out! Kokuto shouted. Ichigo was caught off guard as a blade connected with his own. Ichigo was facing down a man with a pyrite-colored helmet with ram horns, black hair, a pyrite chest plate, an azure blue cape, and golden greaves. He was carrying a gnarly-looking scimitar as it was made of steel in the center, but black steel all along the sides and towards the inside center, making it look as if the sword was singed when, in fact, it was not. There was also a chip in the middle of the blade. The warrior was also carrying a shield. It was sapphire with the pyrite emblem of a lion's head on it. I did not think I would face a warrior this day, the armored man spoke. I don't have time to deal with you, Ichigo stated. I'm here to save my sister, so just move out of my way. Your friends may pass if they wish, but I do not allow my opponents to disengage me. Ichigo, ignore what he says. That man is Orin, the number 20 Togabito. You'll never win against him. Kokuto shouted. Oh, is that all? Just 20? Ichigo said arrogantly. Don't be a dumbass. Lelich shouted. Lelich was about to shout off a plan, but saying it with your enemy in earshot was probably a dumber idea than Ichigo fighting him. Kokuto, Ichigo pushed away from Orin, how much farther do we have? Circle 7, but 6 should be negligible in terms of fighting, no room, Kokuto told Ichigo. Then, carry on without me and come back for me when you've rescued Yuzuru. Ichigo glared down into Orin's eyes. Ichigo, you don't have to challenge someone far above your ability like this. You'll get clobbered. Kendra warned. I have to fight him. I have to keep getting stronger. Ichigo aimed his blade at Orin. That guy will let you all pass if I fight him. There's no trouble there. Besides, fighting someone stronger than you and living to tell about it is how you get stronger through experience. Baka. This isn't a role-playing game. You are going to get yourself killed. Tatsuki pleaded. I said go. Ichigo scowled. Go and rescue Yuzu and then come back for me. Should you lose, and you most likely will from the sound of it, I will let you live, warrior in black, Orin said to him. See, Ichigo said to his friends, nothing to worry about. Kokuto was already further down the path. Come on, it's this way. Just remember your promise to Orim. Tatsuki shouted at her friend before she took off. Did the warden put you up to this? Ichigo asked Orin. No, I simply heard about your arrival and decided to investigate. It is rare that non-Togabito ever enter hell. I am curious as to the kind of fighters the living world now provides, Orin stated. I've been in this infernal place for at least 1300 years. I've challenged a great deal of fighters in my time. Does that include the current number 1? Ichigo asked. And who are you to speak of that one so casually? Orin asked. Kokuto mentioned the Togabito's power. You're number 20 and you seek fights. I'm no genius, but it seems pretty possible that you may have clashed. Orin chuckled. If I had ever crossed paths with the current number 1, I would not be standing here. Orin stated. My rank is proof of those I've challenged. I intend to challenge the current number 19 when I believe I am ready. And where would I rank, do you think? Ichigo asked. Hard to say, Orin stated. You're definitely above the 200 mark, but I couldn't tell you how strong exactly. I see, Ichigo said and donned his hollow mask. how about now? The top 100, without a doubt, Orin answered. Well, alright then, Ichigo said and prepared to strike. Let's go. Ichigo charged down Orin as his blade collided upon Orin's shield. Orin took swing at Ichigo's face, but the teen bent backwards onto his knees and let Orin press into his blade. Ichigo then retreated back and around Orin like lightning and attacked with a fierce Getsuga Tensho. Orin turned on a dime and blocked the strike with his shield. Ichigo, can you hear me? It was Tensou Zanjutsu. Just fine, Ichigo said as he saw Orin slowly approach him. You have something important to tell me. Yes, Tensou Zanjutsu answered, this atmosphere is overclocking your hollow mask. Hold that thought. Ichigo shouted as suddenly Orin broke out into a sprint and charged forward and swung wide as Ichigo dodged to the side. He was blown back by an Azure Energy Arc and had to flip backwards to gain aerial control. You were saying? I was saying don't worry about your mask's time limit in this area. The atmosphere here is feeding it so it will last until you take it off. However, if you leave it on for too long it'll leave that much more drained afterwards and it'll deteriorate your condition further. Tensou Zanjutsu told him. Thanks for the warning, Ichigo stated, but, I can't afford to fight without it right now. I know. I just wanted to let you know the consequences of your actions. Tensou Zanjutsu told him. His presence faded from Ichigo's mind and Ichigo looked around not seeing Orin. Now, where are you? He then sensed Orin right behind him and leapt back and turned around and fired a Getsuga blast as Orin took a swing at him from behind. Orin stared at Ichigo in the air. Am I safe in the air? Can he not reach me up here? Ichigo thought to himself. Ichigo watched as Orin crossed his sword arm over his body. When he swung back, a ball of sky blue lightning came roaring at Ichigo. Okay, maybe not. Getsuga Tensho. He fired forward the blast of energy and then dodged to the side after slowing down the attack. He made for the ground and then began rapidly using bursts of Shunpo to confuse Orin as to Ichigo's location, but when Ichigo got close his disorientation was made useless when Orin charged lightning into his blade and then released the energy from the blade in a disc at Ichigo. Ichigo dodged to his right, which Orin predicted, and tossed his shield out at Ichigo and smacked him in the side of the face. Ichigo's neck would have snapped if his mask hadn't taken the brunt of the attack. Like Tensou Zanjutsu stated though, the area was like nectar to Ichigo's hollow powers and Ichigo's mask regenerated on its own. However, the shield was only meant to stun Ichigo for a few moments and Orin was on his ass like a nerd driving to get first in line at a midnight release. Orin slashed Ichigo along the back and then slammed Ichigo in the stomach with his shield as Ichigo turned to face Orin directly. Ichigo backflipped to gain aerial control and released a Getsuga Tensho, but Orin dodged to the side and circled around Ichigo's right flank. Ichigo vanished and took to the sky before using Shunpo to disorient Orin as to where he would land. Orin simply held up his shield and upon noticing his opponent's tactic, Ichigo hatched an idea. He prepared the attack as he came and landed in front of Orin and fired at point blank. Zero de Luna, the massive black zero, outlined in red, did insane chip damage to Orin's shield, but wholly the attack was ineffective. There were plenty of dings and scratches on Orin's shield, but the attack did little more than damage the lion emblem. Was that your best attack? Orin asked. A pity, he charged lightning into his blade and charged Ichigo down. Ichigo charged Getsuga into his blade and locked weapons with Orin, but was finding himself overpowered. You certainly are strong for a mortal. I am impressed, but this battle is not over until one of falls onto their knees, and don't you even think about giving up. I'm not so weak-minded as that, Ichigo said, and overcharged the Getsuga on his blade and created a landmine-sized explosion of Getsuga as he had once seen his hollow do. Ichigo and Orin were split from each other after the explosion, but Orin didn't seem to be injured in the slightest. Damn it, just how powerful is this guy? My attacks are completely ineffective. Ichigo knocked the fear out of his system. No, I can't get scared just because I can't damage him. I just need to hold out till my friends get back. Ichigo leaned back and held his blade up by his chin. I'll just play defense. Orin noticed this. I see, so he means to go on the defense now, does he? A wise decision. Orin charged Ichigo down with the lightning in his blade. He attacked Ichigo with an overhead vertical slash and Ichigo took a step back and blocked with his sword held horizontally. Orin pulled back his sword and tried a diagonal strike, but Ichigo sidestepped and blocked as the strike hit the left side of his blade and then jumped when Orin performed a horizontal strike and blasted an overhead, two-handed Getsuga Tensho right in his face. Orin retreated back with his cape concealing his face to prevent burns. Ichigo held his ground. He had no means of attacking Orin, so there was no reason for him to take advantage of his opponent's decrease in guard. Orin came back at him with a fierce, sweeping slash. Ichigo leapt back and waited for Orin to come in again. He glared defiantly at Orin, intending to draw this out as long as he needed to. "I like that look you're giving me. I was right to choose you as my opponent," Orin said, pointing his scimitar at Ichigo. "You are truly a skilled individual, but don't think you are close to my level just because you can see my attacks and block them. In hell, those of us within the top 100 very frequently hide our true level of power. This is only my initial level of power." "And, are you going to power up?" Ichigo asked. "It would be a waste on you," Orin stated. "I have enjoyed this battle, but unfortunately I see no need to continue it. You are strong, but I grow weary of a warrior who cannot make things interesting. Therefore, I intend to end this with my next strike." "I'd like to see you try." Ichigo didn't think that was possible, but he completely lost sight of Orin and the man was suddenly on Ichigo's opposite side, blade swung out and up. Ichigo's mask shattered and a slash wound appeared on his pectorals, his abdomen, and each of his legs, and the wounds were jagged and wide. "I couldn't even follow that attack." "Zandajeki, slaying strike," Orin said as he put his sword away. A more brutal slash appeared along Ichigo's back below where he had already been cut. "My finishing move. Know this, warrior, if a man tells you he can make a picture leap out of a frame and squirt sake in your ear and you challenge his ability to do so, you will wind up with sake in your ear." Orin began to walk away, leaving Ichigo crouched over his sword. "As promised, I will not kill you, mortal warrior Ichigo. Farewell." Orin then departed. Ichigo crumpled over onto the ground and succumbed to his injuries. He didn't know how long he had been out for before he found himself being talked to. "Hey," a voice called to him. Ichigo did not stir. "Hey! Wake up!" A foot kicked him in lower side of the left side of his ribcage. "Ow!" he moaned and slowly opened his eyes. Ichigo's wounds had healed, but he didn't know how they had been done so. He was laying on his stomach and slowly got to his feet. He looked around. He was still in hell. He looked from side to side and then looked back to the left. He had company. There was a Togabito standing off to his left. The Togabito was wearing a white mantle, concealing their face and upper body completely. Beneath the hood, Ichigo could see pink lips that were incredibly feminine, and the woman's lower body made it obvious from the tight black pants on her body, completely lacking shoes, and the crimson flame style print on the pants as well. The Togabito's arms were concealed underneath the mantle she wore. Ichigo immediately became defensive, holding out his blade in front of him. Togabito had been nothing but trouble. "Who are you?" he demanded to know. The Togabito reached out with their arm and lightly pushed down on Ichigo's blade. Painted red nails made it obvious that he was talking to someone of the opposite gender. "Relax," the Togabito spoke to him. "I'm here to help." "Help? What do you mean?" "Allow me to explain. Earlier, during the time Ichigo had been unconscious, Kokuto led Lelouch and the others along until they reached an area of the fifth circle that overlooked another part of it. Along the plains were hundreds upon hundreds of skeleton warriors. "Shuren's expecting us, it seems," Kokuto stated. "Shuren created those?" Susanna asked. "The Book of Volcarona. It's a dangerous spell book that he found a few months ago. It increased his power to my level. Before he obtained the book he was only number 200. He's been tinkering with it for a while and he could become more powerful than me if he continues to use it," Kokuto told the others. "Then we've got to get it away from him immediately," Kendra stated. "Agreed," Lelouch said, and everyone charged down into the fray and attacked the skeletons straight up. However, as the party cleaved through the hordes upon hordes of skeletons, Kokuto watched and waited and then, after a little while, made his move. He charged into the battlefield and one by one he cut down Lelouch and the party as they began to become exhausted from the never-ending fight, except for Susanna. Instead he tied her up using the bandages on his body and revealing his charred and burned right side. After his slaughter, Kokyuto laughed as Kendra, Lelouch, Chad, and Tatsuki lay mortally wounded at his feet. Or rather, 3 of them were. Lelouch glanced up with ire at Kokyuto. "You bastard, you deceived us. Nii-san, why are you doing this?" "Lelouch Dono and the others are my friends," Susanna cried. "Don't be stupid, we were never gifted with the power to make friends. We were alienated in the streets. Even the guilds would not accept us. I had to become a mercenary to get the money to put the food on our plates," Kokyuto raged. "I will protect you from everything and everyone." "What are you, stupid?" Clutching the stab wound in his chest, Lelouch got to his feet. "You can't go around killing anyone who dares to get near your sister, that's just psychotic." Kokyuto responded by punching Lelouch to the ground. "Lelouch Dono," Susanna struggled to her feet and dive-bombed in between Kokyuto and Lelouch, laying on top of the man she loved. "Nii-san, you can't do this. I love Lelouch Don, why would you hurt the man I love? He's deceived you, Susanna, whatever he's done to deserve your love, he's bewitched you. Your emotions are not under your control," Kokyuto told her. "You're wrong, please stop this, Nii-san. Please." Susanna sobbed. "You can do whatever you want to me, but please don't hurt Lelouch Dono." "I'm sorry, Susanna," Kokyuto told her with soft eyes and then pointed his blade down upon her and Lelouch, "but this must be done." He shouted and then tossed his sister out of the way and stabbed Lelouch straight through, causing him to scream out in pain. "No!" Susanna screamed. Lelouch felt his consciousness fading. "This can't be my past, my future, was it all a lie?" Lelouch's consciousness faded out. Present time. If Ichigo had been furious when Shuren grabbed Yuzu and Karen, then there was no word in the human dictionary to describe the outrage and pure rage he felt at Kokyuto for doing what the Togabito had just told him. Ichigo screamed out in righteous fury only for the Togabito woman to slap him across the face. "Hey! What the hell?" he yelled. "My friends were killed. My sister in mortal danger and you slap me. What the fuck is wrong with you?" The Togabito let merely a portion of her riotsu leak out. Ichigo buckled over from the intensity. "I have suffered much more than you have, mortal. I have suffered more than you can possibly begin to imagine." Ichigo was choking on her riotsu. "Her riotsu, it's so powerful, I've never felt anything like it before. It's in a completely different league from that Orin guy's." "Is she one of the top 10? Now," the woman said, lowering riotsu to normal levels, "come with me. I will help you save your comrades and your sister." Ichigo didn't budge. "How do I know I can trust you? How do I know that you won't turn out just like Kokyuto?" Ichigo asked her. "I want Shuren dead," the woman responded. "I seek not the deaths of mortals, for now." "And just what is that supposed to mean?" Ichigo glared. "Exactly what it sounds like," the woman in white responded. "One day I too will attempt to escape from here. And should we cross paths at that time, you and I will be enemies, but for now you need me and I need to reduce my sentence. In the end, we both win." Kokyuto said that mortals that die in hell become Togabito. "Can you save my friends when we've defeated them? If we obtain the Book of Volcarona, there is a spell in the book that can transfer into someone else, in this case, me. Since your friends were killed and not captured by Kusanada, the sentencing would only be a month and steadily grow, but if the sentencing finishes they would be reincarnated, not reborn. I can cast that spell and absorb the sin. The spell will work so long as their sentencing remains under 3 years. The spell is meant to allow lesser demons to exist in the natural world, so with a little modification for the incantation, using my knowledge of the language of magic, it should work," the woman responded. Ichigo dropped to his knees in gratitude. Thank you so much." "There's no need to thank me. Come," the woman guided him. Ichigo followed. "Hey, by the way, you never told me your name." I know who you are, Kurosaki Ichigo," the woman responded. She didn't say anything else. "Well, what am I supposed to call you?" Ichigo asked. "I need no warnings, advice, or planning from someone like you, and if it's just the two of us I could be the only person you would be speaking to. There's no need for you to know my name, or my rank," the woman answered. She walked forward and began whistling a tune to herself that sounded pretty upbeat. Ichigo followed suit. He decided he would trust this mysterious woman and she would help him get back his sister and save his friends. To be continued. Chapter 110, Ichigo's Heroic Rage. Third-person POV. Hell. Circle 7. The sound of dripping water echoed into Lelich's head as he came to. I'm alive? He then noticed that he was hung up against a cave wall by his wrists and there was a chain covering his currently almost nude body. What the hell? So, you've awakened. The voice was not Kokyuto's, but Shuren's. Lelich looked over to see both of the villains standing next to Susanna, who was tied up with tape over her mouth. She looked downright miserable. Damn it. Let her go. Lelich demanded. You don't get to make demands, Captain Lamperouge, Kokyuto said, holding up his blade. And I'll never let my sister go. I will protect her from everything and everyone. And tying her up and holding her here against her will accomplish that. Lelich scowled. I don't expect you to understand, Kokyuto said with a sneer. I could never understand. Only a monster would deprive his sister of her freedom, Lelich growled. Ah, yes, you mentioned you have a sister too. And how did that go for you? Kokyuto asked. I died for her, to make the world we lived in a better place. I never intended to do so when I first tried to help her, but that's how I functioned. I worked tirelessly to revolutionize the world, to make it in a world she would want to live in. My sister, Nunnally, wanted a world in which kindness is extended to all, a world of peace and prosperity. I've always fought for that end. He's lived for over 100 years, even if his sister were far younger she couldn't still be alive, could she? Susanna was confused. She was blind and crippled, but she always had a smile on her face, expressing her gratitude of being able to live to have someone there for her. I gave her what she wanted, or at least I did my best to try, but I never held my sister hostage against her will. Lelich's outburst was responded by Kokyuto stabbing him in the gut. He vomited blood. You will not talk back to me. Kokyuto raged and ripped out his sword. Susanna whined in her displeasure. It's all right, Susanna, soon you will understand. Soon this man and these others will be erased from your mind and we shall be family once again, Kokyuto promised his sister. Susanna spoke out against her brother, but all she said was muffled by the bindings over her mouth. She then started crying and tears dripped from her eyes to the floor of the cave surface she lay upon. Susanna, Lelich spoke, despite being in dire pain. Susanna picked up her head to look at the man she loved. I don't care what he says. My future is already pre-written, we'll make it out of this, I promise you. Lelich Dono, Susanna sniffed. Instilling false hope won't do you any good, Kokyuto said. It's not false hope, Lelich said with blood dripping from his lips. Oren said it himself, he was going to leave Ichigo alive. And, what of it? Shuren asked. That boy will stop at nothing to rescue us. Kokyuto, you bore witness to the start of Ichigo's transformation. Let me warn you both, when he gets here, you're both in for a good solid beating, Lelich taunted. His response was Kokyuto's sword thrown from across the room into his abdomen. Lelich coughed up more blood. Susanna shrieked in horror. Despite the pain though, Lelich continued to taunt, of course, I have a feeling you want Ichigo to lose his temper, else you would not have kidnapped Yuzo. You want him to go over the edge, but I don't think you exactly comprehend the type of power you're dealing with or that we can bring him to his senses momentarily, and once we've done that your lives are forfeit. Let's say for the sake of argument that you're right, Kokyuto said with a troll smile, and just how do you intend to escape from the chains that bind you after that? I am the most brilliant mind in all of the Soul Society, Lelich bragged, no matter how long it takes we will find a way. Circle 6. Ichigo and his new comrade walked through the 6th circle, which was rather short on monsters. The only two enemies they had come across were two skeleton pirate warriors with mechanical parts summoned by the Book of Volcarona. Both Ichigo and his partner defeated each one with minimal effort. Ichigo followed the woman in white until they heard rattling, and the rattling was coming from a creature that was made up of 3 finger-shaped tentacles banging against the cave walls. Piece of cake, Ichigo said and slashed the tentacles apart with a Getsuga Tensho. However, it turned out to be anything but. As Ichigo and his ally looked down, a gigantic eyeball blinked up at them. The eyeball was the size of a small swimming pool. Then the whole cave began to shake. I don't like where this is going. Oh, don't be such a baby, the female Togabito jabbed at him. The cave suddenly broke apart in a gigantic creature whose body mass seemed to stretch high into the fifth plane, and consuming parts of the sixth and seventh stood in front of the woman in white. Ichigo had merely destroyed its eyelashes. The poor teen wanted to ball up and cry because, really, what do you do when something that big wants to kill you? The woman in white knew. Step aside, she told Ichigo. You're going to fight that thing. Ichigo was in awe. Let me show you the power you could only dream of achieving. Power surpassing that of even the head captain himself, the woman thrust out her right arm to the side. A titanium bracelet appeared on her arm, and two straight lines jutted out from along the portion of the bracelet on the back side of her hand before a pair of jagged serrated blades with Damascus edges extended off along the backs of her arms, reaching a sword lengths and a half in length. She did the same for her other arm. Watch and learn, she told Ichigo. To Ichigo, all he saw her do was turn and pivot, but she was in a different position. The woman's right arm was crossed over her body and her left arm was extended outward. She was bending over to the point where her nose almost touched the ground. Ichigo then saw the blood on the tip of her left wrist blade in a single drop dripped to the ground, and then, well, only Senbonzakura could produce more lacerations on the creature in the same split second the Togabito helping Ichigo had just done. The monster fell apart into pieces. Ichigo swallowed. The woman in front of him was scarier than anything he had witnessed, even more terrifying than his own hollow power. The wrist claws vanished and the woman hid her arms in her mantle again. Let's keep moving. Alright, Ichigo followed suit and followed the woman into circle number 7. Only minutes were left before Ichigo would arrive to deliver the sound-beating Lelouch expected him to deliver. Of course, at the same time, the ritual to convert Lelouch and the others into Togabito was also almost complete. It's just about time, Kokuto said and stepped towards Lelouch, twirling his blade. I think I'll start with you, since you're such a big mouth. Do your worst, Lelouch scowled. That defiance does you no good. Kokuto shouted and brought down his blade. Susanna screamed in protest, but her screams were unnecessary as Ichigo arrived just in the nick of time. Kokuto, Ichigo scowled at him. Kurosaki Ichigo. Lelouch was right, you came all the way here, Kokuto said. I had a little help, Ichigo said with a smirk. One of your own came along and healed my wounds and helped me out. I think she's one of the top 10. Don't be absurd. The top 10 are selfish bastards, with no concern of others. There's no way one of them would even think of assisting you, Kokuto said, cackling. She helped me get here, but she said kicking your ass was my honor, Ichigo grinned, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Please, Kokuto knocked Ichigo away. Shuren. Right, Shuren used an incantation from the Book of Volcarona. Flame Lance. The burning heat of the lance went blazing towards Ichigo and sent him crashing through the wall. Ichigo, Kokuto, and Shuren were now on the outskirts of Circle 7, the frozen wastelands. The ground was blue, but all around the plain dripped with orange liquid, the liquid of Togabito being dumped into Circle 9 so that they could regenerate. Ichigo stood his ground against Shuren and Kokuto. He was going to fight both of them simultaneously. Does the holification addendum still work down here? Ichigo asked Tensou Zanjutsu. So long as you are in hell, I will do my best to regulate it. Be careful, Tensou Zanjutsu replied. Ichigo donned his hollow mask and started by attacking Kokuto. His blade smashed against Kokuto's chains. As Kokuto struck back, Ichigo parried with massive ease. My swings feel stronger, Ichigo said as he swung and into Kokuto's skin as he pushed away the chains with his blade. My attacks feel faster. Shuren attacked Ichigo with bolts of flame. Ichigo dodged each and every one of them instinctually. My reflexes feel sharper. Is this from fighting Orin? Have I gotten stronger, more reactive from fighting someone far above my level? Fire burn and fire roar, total destruction from mountain to shore. Shuren set Ichigo aflame with the towering inferno he'd used to torch his house. Ichigo stood firmly amidst the flames with a fierce look in his eyes. That attack won't harm me anymore, Shuren. Ichigo leapt at the spellcasting Togabito, but Kokuto stopped him, acting as Shuren's shield. Shuren then flanked and got behind Ichigo. He then fired a continuous stream of blazing hot flames into Ichigo's back, and then Kokuto slashed Ichigo and then whacked him over the heads with his chains and sent Ichigo into the ground. Ichigo got up, still staring defiantly. "It's pointless, Ichigo, you can't beat us both," Kokuto declared violently. "Yes, release your hatred, Ichigo, show us the hatred you feel," Shuren said. Ichigo's body pulsed and he felt the urge to transform into his ultimate form. He resisted it. "It's no good, he doesn't want to come out to play," Kokuto told Shuren. "Well, that's why we brought a little insurance," Shuren stated. "It should be cashable right about now." "Yeah, I guess it is," Kokuto stated. He vanished faster than Ichigo could react, and while Ichigo fought Shuren, Kokuto came back with Yuzu and dangled her in front of Ichigo. "Bad luck, Ichigo," Kokuto chuckled, "looks like your sister couldn't stand the atmosphere in hell. She's already got a chain in her chest." "Yuzu," Ichigo's anger pulsed. Much like Needles had done when he tried to rape Orium, Kokuto pressed the button labeled Berserk on Ichigo's control panel. Ichigo became enraged exactly as he had done when Talbumasuk blew up the replica of Masaka's grave. Ichigo was beyond anger, beyond fury. Ichigo was in pure undulated rage. In a flash of anger, Ichigo raged towards the Togabito and grabbed Yuzu before returning to his original position, blade in hand. After a few seconds, several of Kokuto's chains shattered into dust, and then Kokuto fell into itty-bitty pieces, only for those pieces to be swallowed up by the ground. "You are going to Circle 9 for a long time for this, Kokuto," Rita said in her abode, angry that she had been played a fool. Back on point, Ichigo set Yuzu down and glared angrily at Shuren. "Bah, I am stronger than Kokuto. I have the Book of Volcarona." With both his hands, Shuren created a font of lava beneath Ichigo, only for it to freeze due to the chilly atmosphere. "Oh, shit, that's right," Shuren said with a blank expression, only for Ichigo to gut him with his sword and then unleash a Getsuga Tensho blast with his sword still lodged inside Shuren's body, disintegrating him. Ichigo dropped to the ground with a hard thud and roared. The white-cloaked female appeared outside and stood atop the cave that was Shuren's base. "Nice job, kid," she told Ichigo. Ichigo, however, could not be reasoned with, as his mind was feral in this form. Without warning, he attacked his ally with 2 full-powered Getsuga Tenshos. She prepped her claws and stopped the attack. "Okay, you really don't want to get into the ring with me, kid. You may be powerful, but you're not my level. You'd have to be sentient first," the woman told him. Ichigo roared at her. "Fine, challenge accepted. It appears I must teach you with pain." "Bring it," the woman readied her wrist claws and then, using magic, summoned a bunch of sais that seemed to materialize out nowhere and rained them down upon Ichigo. He deflected them all with his blade, but in his current frame of mind did not realize that it was a distraction so that his opponent could get in on him. She did, and she cut him right in the shoulder. This was no scratch either. A few inches deep and she would have severed his arm. Ichigo regenerated the damage and struck back with a fearsome swing. His opponent lured him away from his sister so that he didn't hurt her by mistake. She lured Ichigo into the air and then black angel wings emerged from her back. She thrust her arms forward, fingers spread apart. Kurai Hissen. Dark splatter, 10 waves of dark energy went blasting towards Ichigo as they fired from the space between his enemy's palms. They actually did damage and sent Ichigo towards the ground. However, he used his Hyper Sonido to get right behind the winged woman and attacked with a decapitating swing. His enemy blocked with her claws. She noticed that Ichigo had healed his injuries completely. His regeneration is fast and his speed even faster, but still it won't be enough. The Togabito spun and kicked Ichigo in the side of the head, destabilizing him and then slashing him across the chest. She then did a dash away from him and prepared an attack. Sarenhuri. Mayhem Beam, a gigantic black energy beam resembling a Zero with a violet outline slammed towards Ichigo. He countered and nullified the attack with a Zero. The woman smirked. "I must make him do that again." Ichigo rushed in on her and attacked with 2 full-powered Getsuga Tenshos from behind. The woman vanished before he had begun to fire and was at a safe distance above and in front of him. She channeled blue energy into her right hand. Power of the Grand Creator, she charged red energy in her left, power of the massive destroyer. She clasped her hands together. Materia spell. Immediately shards of a meteor rained down upon Ichigo with fiery wrath. Ichigo endured the attack and fired a zero at his enemy. His opponent spread her arms wide and let the zero emerge full contact onto her body. She was disappointed when the attack did little more than scorch her clothes and singe her skin. He had taken out more than a few of her chains though, reducing her sentence by 25 years as a result. I was right, she thought to herself. Right now he doesn't have the power to do critical damage to my body, but, if he trains that power, and meets Rita, eventually he will and I will be free at long last. But for now, she readied her claws and tapped them together. She began charging a swirling circle that appeared to be creating a black hole as it distorted the space around it. It was one of the Togabito's strongest attacks. Konrin Meiho. Chaos Spell. The attack blasted forward with more than 5 times the destructive power of Ichigo's zero. If not for his Iero he would have ended up like Shuren. The Togabito managed to do little more than shatter his Iero and knock him out of his hollow form. She revived him immediately. Ichigo sat up upon being revived and smiled at the woman in white. "Oh, it's you," he said and took her hand as she helped him to his feet. "Thanks. You don't need to thank me." Now then, the woman vanished and picked up Shuren's spell book that he had left behind. "This is mine now," she enforced. "Yeah, and you promised to use it to save my friends," Ichigo reminded her. Yes, I did at that," the woman stated. She picked up Ichigo's sister up off the ground. "Hold her, we'll start with your sister first." "Thank you," Ichigo stated. "I told you to stop doing that," she said. She chanted in a language Ichigo did not understand. It matched the language written on the cover of the book itself. A language not found on Earth. Instantly the chain on Yuzo shattered and was transferred to the woman casting it. "There, I've just added 2 months to my sentence, though since you shattered 25 years with your outburst, I'm still profiteering." The woman repeated the process for Lelouch and the others who had also been affected. She also healed Lelouch's wounds. The first thing Lelouch did once he was free was unbind and hug Susanna. Lelouch looked at the woman as she continued to free and revive the others. "The riot so from her it's enormous, but I also sense different types. It's as if her genetic makeup is hybrid. I sense Soul Reaper and Hollow DNA in her, but she's not an Arrancar, they have a more distinct sensation. It would be easier to tell if she would take down her hood." Lelouch knew how much identity meant to an individual considering his masquerade as Zero, so removing it forcefully was out of the question. "It's possible she's the offspring of a Soul Reaper and either a Vizard or an Arrancar, but is that possible? I can think of one way, but she shouldn't be this old or this powerful. What's going on?" Lelouch wondered to himself. After finishing healing and reviving Ichigo's friends, the woman prepared to leave. "Now if you'll excuse me, I must depart." "Wait. Please wait." Ichigo called out to her. "What?" She looked back at him, slightly annoyed. "It's just, how do we get out of here?" Ichigo asked. The woman sighed. "I'll escort you to Circle 8 and then back up to 4, there's a naturally occurring exit gate there where you can all leave. It's there to taunt us Togabito since it repels our chains, though those special cloaks and masks Shuren's gang had bypassed it. And, of course, Kokuto got permission from the warden only to deceive her." She laughed. "What a fool." The woman escorted Ichigo and his friends to the Hell Gate. Ichigo smiled when he saw the sunshine on the other side of the gate. He clutched Yuzo tightly to him. The woman then turned around and began to leave Ichigo's group. "Kazumi," she said. Ichigo picked his head and looked at her. "Pardon?" "My name," she responded. "You asked me for it. And you mortals seem to have a thing for thanking people, so I felt I should tell it to you, especially so you know which name to tremble before when I make my move." "Well, I don't know what you're plotting, right now I don't care. I just want to get Yuzu home, but for now thank you, Kazumi-san," Ichigo told her. "You've really been a big help." Kazumi began to walk away again. "Hey, as long as you're giving out information, what's your ID number? Which level Togabito are you?" Kazumi threw her head back and laughed and then began to sing the words to the tune she had been humming before. If I want to see some action, I gotta be the center of attraction. Make sure that you got your eyes on me before I pluck them out and kill you with glee. Be the focus of attention, kill you so my name will not be mentioned. I come up from the shadows just to shine cause the time is right for you to see me. I am what you're running for and I'm the one they all abhor. I am better than everyone. Kazumi tore off her mantle, revealing her true form. She had an updo hairstyle with 2 antenna hair strands sticking out behind her. The ends of said antenna were lilac in direct contrast to the rest of her chocolate brown hair. The rest of her hair dropped at her shoulder and stuck out in an unkempt fashion along the right side. She had a model-like figure and wore a thin red tank top underneath a thick black tight jacket that only went down an inch or two past her large breasts. A white, Japanese-style dragon was emblazoned on the right side of the jacket and up the center of her undershirt. She wore a detached sleeve on her left arm that went from her wrist to halfway up her forearm. It matched her jacket in design. She wore a silver bracelet, a sapphire bracelet and a maroon bracelet on her right wrist. She wore blood drop-shaped and colored earrings. She wore a large red sash around her waist, tied like a bow tie in the back and wore a battle skirt. Her arms and legs had a few scars along them. But nevertheless she was absolutely stunning. The undisputed, Kazumi looked directly at Ichigo and his nakama, revealing her dark brown eyes, unmarred face, and black sclera. The sclera change was due to the massive amounts of power she had absorbed over the years. Number 1. Everyone just stared at Kazumi. No one knew how to react or what to say. After hearing so much about the fearsome, deadly, and lethal number 1 Togabito here, she was staring right at them. Lelouch and Ichigo couldn't figure out what was more disturbing, the fact that this hot and sexy woman was leagues stronger than Aizen and killed anything in her path, or that she, instead of maiming them all, was helping them. Kazumi, sensing the awkwardness, simply vanished on the spot via a teleportation spell. Ichigo and the others marched out of hell. Kazumi hadn't gone far, just enough so that they couldn't see her, but she could still see them. In other words, on top of Rita's tower. Rita approached her from behind. "Your actions intrigue me, Kazumi," Rita said to her. "It was all for self-profit. How much am I getting reduced? For the selflessness you acted upon, I'll take away all of the sin you accumulated and hack off another 40 years. You still have 85 years to carry on, Kazumi. Will you still choose to rebel?" Rita asked her. "I can never forgive what you did to me," Kazumi said, letting one of her claws materialize and looking at her reflection upon the steel. "I will play by your rules, Rita, but only because I want out of here. I utterly despise you. I will try to eliminate my sentence or carry out my plan, whichever comes first. I understand. Just know that I will stop you when that time comes. I cannot punish you for what you will or might do, only for what you have done. Keep that in mind," Rita told her. "You are welcome to try, rodent. For I aim to become so powerful that not even you could stop me," Kazumi told her. "Bold words, but you'll never back them up," Rita said and vanished. Karakura Town. 7 p.m. It was the middle of the night when Ichigo and the others exited hell and the gate shut behind them. Orium ran out of the house to give Ichigo a hug. Ichigo had to pass off Yuzota Tatsuki in order to embrace his girlfriend. "I came back just like I promised," he told her. "You did," Orium said, holding on to him. The next day. 5 p.m. Ichigo took a long walk down by the river where his mom died and then began to circle back to his house. As he reached his home, he stopped by the flowers he had set up by a lamp post. The bottle of ice water with the flowers was set up with dark pink roses in the bottle. He stomped in front of the lamp post and bent down to the small plaque he put next to it. It read, "Kazumi. Kazumi, I don't know what your goal is or why you insist that we will be enemies, or why you are in hell, but you saved my friends and my sister for me, and for that I will always be grateful." Ichigo stood up and smiled. "Sinner or not, you, unlike Kokuto, have a good heart. If anyone's the strongest sinner in hell, I'm glad it's someone like you who's selfless." Kazumi, who was in hell, watching this as she sat in Rita's tower, was disgusted and prepared to leave. "You don't know me," she thought to herself. While Ichigo's thoughts did not reach her, she knew the symbolism of dark pink roses and understood what the memorial meant. "I'm not a good person, Ichigo. I helped you for my own selfish reasons, and when I see you again, if I see you again, we will be enemies. She left Rita's tower and vanished to another spot in the fifth circle. She opened the Book of Volcarona. Now then, let's see what this thing can do, she said, and began testing a few spells. Back in Karakara town, at the cemetery, Lelich was carving into an empty grave Kokuto's name. When he finished, he wiped his brow. How does it look? He asked Susanna. She smiled down at it and then added, beloved brother, to the headstone. Even after what he did? Lelich asked. Susanna dropped the chisel and placed a hand over her heart and looked at the gravestone. I will remember my brother as he exists in my memory. Kokuto, he was such a proud man. You would have been friends had we been born in the same time and place. Lelich Dano. Hell made him crazy and overprotective. He was so intent on finding me to make up for his mistake that he didn't realize how much he was hurting me in the process. I loved my brother. He was everything to me when I was alive. Susanna shook her head, but I don't need his protection anymore. She turned around and fell against Lelich. I have you, Lelich Dano. Lelich held Susanna in his arms and stroked her silky silver hair. And I'll always be here when you need me, Lelich told her. Susanna stood up straight and, still in Lelich's embrace, looked him in the eye. Remember when you told me, back when we were dealing with Muramasa, that you knew you needed me right then and there? It was only a few days ago. Of course I remember, Lelich told her. Well, I need you right now, a lot, Susanna told Lelich, hands on his shoulders, eyes quivering. Well, I'm right here, Lelich told her. The two embraced and kissed. After they parted, Susanna said to him, Lelich Dano, you mentioned you had a sister and... Lelich parted from Susanna and turned around. I don't wish to speak of it. But you sounded so passionate. It sounded like she meant so much to you. Why do you? It's an old wound I don't want to drudge up. Not here anyway. The less times I have to bring it up the better. In fact, one of these days when you and Yuna aren't busy, come see me, I'll explain it all to you. I think you deserve to know. What about Nimue? Susanna asked. Nimue will learn about it in her own way, Lelich stated. I intend to make sure of that. I just want to know one thing. What's that? Susanna asked. Lelich turned around to look back at her. For as long as we've known each other, no matter how I've seemed to you or how I've acted, you've always looked at me with eyes of such praise and admiration. Is it all really because I showed you common courtesy? That was part of it. I mean, that was made me think fondly of you, but I don't know when I became so attached to you. I think it was when you kissed me for the first time that Susanna slid her fingers up over her face, started developing feelings for you. And that brings me to my next question. Would you, no matter what you knew about me, no matter what I may have been like, no matter what I might be like, will you always accept me? Lelich asked Susanna, holding her hands in his hands, looking her right in the eye. Susanna smiled warmly. Past, present, and future are all intertwined, Susanna said to Lelich. Your past has made you what you are today. Your present is who you are now, and your future is what you will become. I am in love with what you are now. Nothing from your past will ever change that, because that is no longer you. And I will always strive to stay by your side no matter what the future may bring. My life is yours to do with it as you wish. I love you more than there are stars in the sky. No matter what, I will continue to love you. Nothing you do, say, or anything I learn about you, could change how I think of you. Even if I broke your heart. Lelich asked her. Susanna stroked his left cheek. If that is your way of saying that I may not get to spend my life as your bride, then that is okay. I will survive, but I will always think of you as the most wonderful man in the world. I will be jealous of the girl at your side, but I will also be happy for you. You've been through so much. Aizen brought you so much grief, drove you to such extremes. You deserve to be happy when all is said and done. Thank you, Susanna, Lelich smiled back at her and hugged her tightly. I needed to hear something like that. That evening, Rangiku, Susanna, and Lelich went back to Soul Society. Ichigo saw them off. This is the first time the role has been reversed. Lelich laughed. Take care of yourself, all right? And keep that demon of yours in check. I'll do my best, Ichigo said. He and Lelouch shook hands and gave each other a friendship hug before Lelouch, his lieutenant, and Susanna headed into the Senkaimon. And just like that, things were back to normal, well, relatively. Kendra, Rukia, and Vera would be sticking around to continue their mission. Also, Ishine was still away on his trip. Ichigo went home that evening and went upstairs to his sister's bedroom. Karen was doing homework in the living room. Yuzo was in the twins' shared bedroom though. She was reading a book. Ichigo knocked on the inside wall. Yuzo sat up. Unii-chan, what is it? She walked over to him. Is something the matter? Nothing's the matter, I just... Ichigo brought his little sister closer to him and gave her a brotherly hug. He thought up of a way to explain his actions that his sister would accept. I had a nightmare the other night that I almost lost you and Karen, you I was closer to losing and, well, I don't want that to happen for real. Considering it's all over now, it was sort of like a nightmare. We're not going anywhere, Unii-chan, Yuzo told him. I know, but, in life, Ichigo struggled to find the right words. Sometimes, in a single minute, everything you once cared about can be taken from you right before your eyes, and so, I just wanted to, in case something close to that nightmare happens, express how much I care. Yuzo gripped her brother's shirt and pressed her head against his abdomen. That means a lot to me, she said. By the way, Ichigo said, looking at the clock, it's almost dinner time. Ah, really? Yuzo darted over to the clock, seeing how it was almost 7:30. Oh no, and I haven't even started anything. Hey, relax, Ichigo said, I'll handle the kitchen tonight. Take the night off, he told his sister. Yuzo flushed and accepted the offer. Thank you, Unii-chan. It's no trouble, Ichigo said and headed for the staircase. I'll let you know when dinner's ready. He then went over to his parents' bedroom and knocked. What? Kendra called from inside. She was still around since, by Lelouch's theory, she could keep Ichigo under a less stressful environment than Rukia could. The constant bickering between the most important woman in the Shiba clan and the substitute would not bode well for Ichigo's deteriorating condition. Dinner's going to be ready soon, I'm cooking. You craving anything in particular? He asked. Not really, make what you want. I'm not picky, Kendra stated. Okay, he said and headed down the stairs and entered the kitchen and began to cook. End of chapter 110. Check the description for the links to the author.